subscribe, like the video, and, if possible, join Patreon. But if you don't have much money, you can support the channel by watching the novels on euroaudiobooks.com. Remember that you can participate in the polls so that your favorite novel gets published for free.
Swordsmanship masters of Hokage. Both of their taijutsu skills were quite astonishing. The overflowing killing intent alone made others unable to help but retreat. The White Fang of the Leaf doesn't plan to take action. While fighting an enemy, Yakura looked at Hatake Tsukumo, standing there, seemingly not planning to move. She immediately had some guesses in her mind. On the other side, Namake's Minato was constantly reaping the small fry. His gaze also frequently turned towards Sarutobi Ryo's side. Looking at Sarutobi Ryo, who was completely different from what he remembered. Namake's Minato's eyes flickered, and the doubts in his heart gradually became clearer. Could it be that Rishnin is indeed the same kind of existence as me? He accepted the prophecy of the sage of the sacred land, thus opening a second loop in life. This was why his performance was so different from the original future, whether it was the title of Black Reaper or the completely changed strength. Let me properly confirm it in this mission. Chapter 24. Storm Release appears for the first time. What do you mean by lightsaber? Iwagakure Village. It was a militaristic ninja village. The entire ninja village was united, with the Tsuchikage and the Daime forming an ironclad alliance. The Tsuchikage ruled Iwagakure Village with strict military discipline. They even set up a department called the Military Court to punish those who committed crimes. Because of these reasons, very few ninjas in Iwagakure dared to disobey military orders. This led to the original story, 10,000 IWA ninjas besieging the Third Reikage for 3 days and 3 nights. The so-called overcorrection. An overly harsh military administration was a more terrifying existence than death. And therefore, Sarutobi Ryo, though a state be vast, warfare will doom it. Iwagakure was precisely because of this militarism that it ultimately led to the original story, the jade-shattering of 10,000 IWA ninjas, making Iwagakure slump and completely lose the possibility of contending for the ninja world. Hearing Sarutobi Ryo's evaluation of his village, Akatsuchi revealed a ferocious look. It's still stronger than your weak Konoha. As soon as the words fell, Akatsuchi used his trump card. He held the sword in his right hand and raised his left hand. With his palm facing the position where Sarutobi Ryo was, he pushed it out fiercely. And in Sarutobi Ryo's eyes, a wisp of fire ignited from the opponent's palm. Then, the light shone, as if a sun had appeared. It was fire release. Tsuchikage Noki possessed the dust release, Kekii Tta. Dust release was formed by the fusion of 3 chakra attributes, wind, fire, and earth. Kitsuchi inherited Naka's earth attribute as the main attribute, and Akatsuchi inherited Naka's fire release as the main attribute. In an instant, under the desert sun, a second sun appeared. Everyone was dazzled by the appearance of this sun and couldn't open their eyes. The scene of the battle stagnated. The burning sun directly bombarded Sarutobi Ryo. This move had a B-rank starting point. If combined with the difficulty of performing the technique without hand seals, then the difficulty of the technique should at least be A rank. You should know that even Uchihamura's Great Fire Annihilation required hand seals, and it was clearly marked in the official databook that Great Fire Annihilation was B rank. Or rather, most fire release ninjutsu did not exceed this B rank difficulty. Akatsuchi's A rank hand seal-less fire release ninjutsu was enough to make his fire release ninjutsu attainments rank among the top tier in the ninja world. Just this move alone could reverse too many situations. However, Sarutobi Ryo, facing this extremely fierce move, simply closed his left eye. His right eye, however, was not affected at all. At the moment of the flash in front of his eyes, he fiercely pushed out his right palm. Ice release, crushing palm. Cold air fluttered, intertwined with heat. With a bang, explosive steam surged. In Akatsuchi's perception, Sarutobi Ryo's palm carried violent chakra and the coldest killing intent sweeping over. with the position where the two made their moves as the center. The air seemed to have turned into an invisible shock wave, suddenly boiling in all directions. After one move, the two retreated at the same time. Steam rose from Sarutobi Ryo's body, faintly burned by the steam. On the other side, Akatsuchi exhaled cold air, his face pale, and his body was slightly trembling. More importantly, his left hand was not covered by the stone fist technique. So, after being hit by Sarutobi Ryo's violent power, his left hand probably had a slight fracture. Very good. Akatsuchi breathed out a mouthful of air and put down his longsword. This time it was both hands. Looking at it, the palms of his hands, which seemed to be combined falsely, looked like Noki performing dust release. A sun had risen from his hands again, and this time, the power of the fire release ninjutsu was incomparable to before. The scorching light illuminated his face and dispelled the chill of the ice release he had received. His ferocious face carried the ultimate killing intent. He wanted to bury the Hokage's son here with this move. In an instant, Sarutobi Ryo had a feeling of being locked on. "Shinen, be careful!" Yamanaka Hikari's exclamation came from afar. As a sensory ninja, she reminded her young master at the first moment that the opponent was going to risk his life. This kind of hint indicated that what was coming next was a fight to the death. Akatsuchi had a trump card, and naturally, he also had one. 75, Section 75, Sarutobi Akira didn't dodge or evade, charging straight towards Akatsuchi. "Foolish," Akatsuchi sneered. Instead of choosing to dodge, he actually dares to charge over. Then just die. As the second sun rose, this time, even Yakura was shaken, losing most of her vision. Everyone stopped their movements, simultaneously closing their eyes or turning away. In the perception of sensory ninjas like Minato Namikaze and Yamanaka Inoichi, the positions of the two were directly filled with a massive amount of chakra. Ice release. Demonic mirroring ice crystals. Boom! The consecutively erected demonic mirroring ice crystals continued to shatter. When the last mirror was blown open, Sarutobi Akira let out a low shout and threw a punch. The strongest rock fist covered with ice release. The ninja body technique, wrapped in ice release chakra, met the fire release ninjutsu. Boom! The dazzling, extreme light made the scene seem as if it were enveloped by a flashbang. In the roaring sound, everyone's vision and hearing were taken away. It was in this kind of scene that Sarutobi Akira seized the opportunity to strike. His left eye was tightly closed, completely unable to open due to the strong light. His right eye was not affected by the flashbang side effects at all. Based on the blurred figure, Sarutobi Akira raised his left hand and released his killing move, Storm Release. Buzz! A laser as thin as a hair lit up in Sarutobi Akira's hand. The extremely focused light shot out at a speed of 300,000 kilometers per second. After a few meters, the power would be greatly attenuated due to the extension of the distance. However, this was enough for the two who were only a little over 1 meter apart. Chirp! Under Sarutobi Akira's control, his palm waved, and the thin laser line swept towards Akatsuchi's neck. In just a moment, Akatsuchi's body shook. The victory was decided. The light slowly dissipated. Everyone tried hard to adapt to the flashbang's after effects remaining in their retinas. Who exactly won or lost? With such powerful fire release ninjutsu, the Hokage's son wouldn't have turned into a charred corpse, right? Soon Yakura, who was least affected by the strong light and possessed the scorch release Kekkei Genkai, let out a low, incredulous cry. "You!" Following Yakura's words, the others who had regained their sight also looked over. They saw the Hokage's son, Sarutobi Akira, holding the chilling blade in one hand. The other hand was carrying Akatsuchi's head. At this time, Sarutobi Akira's skin surface was steaming, obviously burned by the high temperature, which made Sarutobi Akira look a little embarrassed. But Sarutobi Akira, who was already carrying Akatsuchi's head, could not be questioned for his strength. "Tsukumo-sensei, I'll leave the rest to you." As Sarutobi Akira spoke, Hatake Tsukumo, who had been watching from the sidelines, nodded slightly. Under the mask was surprise, but also relief. As the White Fang was unleashed, the Iwagakure ninjas ushered in their true doomsday. It's Konoha's White Fang. Chapter 25. Kusanagi Sword. Chirp. A white flash cut through a crescent arc. Hatake Tsukumo himself seemed to have disappeared. The extremely fast speed allowed most people to only see the unleashing of the White Fang. The name Konoha White Fang also came from this. Before long, there were many corpses on the ground. The Sunagakure ninjas looked at the reappearing figure with awe. Konoha's White Fang was a great enemy of Sunagakure, and countless Sunagakure ninjas had died at his hands. Even Shiobama's son and daughter-in-law had not escaped the misfortune. Now, as a comrade in arms, it was particularly reassuring. Wu, the last IWA ninja, slumped to the ground, constantly trembling. Facing a strong man like Konoha's White Fang, he was crying with tears and snot, and he didn't even have the courage to raise his weapon. However, Hatake Tsukumo didn't intend to kill him. Yakura also didn't have this intention, because someone needed to report what happened here to a Wagakure village in order to prove the connection between Sunagakure and Konoha. After the last survivor fled in embarrassment, everyone turned their attention to Sarutobi Akira again. The strength of Konoha's White Fang was a proven past. Now, a new star was rising in Konoha. The Hokage's eldest son had earned everyone's respect with his strength. And to be honest, even Yakura hadn't noticed how Sarutobi Akira had cut off the other party's head. However, through the wound, you could still get a glimpse of it. There are traces of high-temperature burning at the neck. Is it fire release, chakra flow? Yakura guessed. This young master had likely attached fire release chakra to the weapon. Almost everyone present thought so. Only Minato Namikaze felt a trace of oddness, but he couldn't say where the problem was, because even he had lost his vision just now, and the overflowing, violent chakra had prevented him from accurately judging what had happened at that moment. But in any case, it's too different from the original future. Minato Namikaze could be sure. If it had developed according to the predetermined future, young Master Akira would absolutely not be able to reach this height now. This corpse and the spoils belong to us. How about it? Sarutobi Akira returned to the team, receiving treatment from Hatake Tsukumo's subordinate. Sarutobi Akira knew this kunoichi wearing a mask. She was a disciple of his mother, Buwako Hibicii, that is the female ninja who delivered Kushina in the original work. As a direct umbu of the Hokage, she followed Hatake Tsukumo's orders and acted as a team member. Yakura snorted, representing her default agreement. That Tsuchikage's son was actually killed in a few strokes, this Sarutobi Akira, was really something. Since the task of cooperation between the two sides has been completed, we have no reason to continue staying here. Sarutobi Akira collected Akatsuchi's corpse, put the blade into its scabbard, and prepared to leave. Please tell the Kazekage-sama, when you return, that we are waiting for good news about the alliance. After speaking, Sarutobi Akira left directly. Yakura didn't stop him, because killing the Tsuchikage's son was a major event. After the Tsuchikage found out, the ninja world might undergo drastic changes, and it was not impossible for the Third Ninja World War to be launched as a result. More importantly, there were also many things within Sunagakure village that needed to be resolved urgently. The departure of Konoha's White Fang and others would make it easier to carry out their plans without becoming an obstacle. Let's go. Yakura took a deep look at Sarutobi Akira and immediately led her people in another direction. Will of Fire System. Item Identification. Kusanagi Sword. Sarutobi Akira was walking on the road, and several lines of text popped up clearly in front of him. I knew it wasn't an ordinary product. The corners of Sarutobi Akira's mouth curled up slightly. Very happy. Kusanagi Sword. In the world of Naruto, there are many. For example, Orochimaru has two, one used in the Chunin exams and Shippuden. One was given to Sasuke. Then there is Itachi's Tatsuka sword, which is also a type of Kusanagi sword. As for the other Kusanagi swords, they are lost in the ninja world, unknown to anyone. So it is very possible that even if others see it, they will not recognize it as the Kusanagi sword. After all, even an ancient existence like Black Zetsu only knows the legend of the Totsuka sword, but does not know that the true face of the Totsuka sword is a spiritual sword. Each Kusanagi sword has different functions, but the unified point is quite obvious. 76, Section 76, that is almost unbreakable. Its sturdiness is unbelievable, and there's absolutely no need to worry about wear and tear. Based on this alone, it could be considered a divine weapon. What's more, every Kusanagi sword also possesses sharpness, just with varying degrees of it. I'll study it slowly when I get back. Sarutobi Ryo carried the sword blade inconspicuously. The other companions around him kept casting respectful glances. It was already late at night, and all was silent. Kazekage-sama, thank you for your hard work. The door to the Kazekage's office was gently pushed open. Sasori walked in with a tray. Late at night, the third Kazekage was still reviewing official documents. Sasori looked up and slowly placed the tray on the desk. Oh, it's Sasori. The third Kazekage looked up, a smile in his eyes. What, did Chiyodono retire for the night? Usually at this time, Chiyo would come to deliver a late-night snack or some refreshing tea. Today, however, it was Sasori instead. Kazusa, Grandma has been getting old recently, and after seeing Konoha's white fang appear, she inevitably feels a little depressed. The third Kazekage's eyes changed slightly. He also felt very sorry for the deaths of Chiyo's son and daughter-in-law. Having the enemy right in front of you, but having to consider the bigger picture is the destiny of those in higher positions. Picking up the teacup, the third Kazekage drank the tea in one gulp. During this process, Sasori stared intently at his movements, afraid of missing anything. After the third Kazekage finished drinking the tea, a strange, morbid smile appeared on Sasori's face. It's done. However, before the smile could fully bloom, a hurried figure walked in from outside the door. Kazekage-sama. The person who came in was Yakura. Looking at this dusty figure, Sasori was slightly surprised. Why so fast? According to the timeline, Yakura should only be back by dawn at the earliest. Could it be that this madwoman didn't stop at all, didn't even rest, and rushed back directly from the northern border? Kazekage-sama, I'll take my leave first. After Sasori finished speaking, he didn't stop for a moment and left directly. Yakura's appearance meant that his plan had only been half successful. No, it had ultimately failed. If they really fought, he was no match for Yakura at the moment. Damn it, Sasori was furious in his heart. He had clearly administered the drug, and the plan should have been foolproof. A colorless and odorless poison to kill the third Kazekage, and then turn him into his own artistic human puppet. That's how it should have been. Sasori hurriedly left the Kazekage building, grabbed his equipment, and quickly left Sunagakure. His hasty departure from the village alarmed others. The act of leaving the village without a warrant was deemed an illegal act. After leaving behind several corpses, new pursuers were dispatched. Hurried footsteps echoed in the Kazekage building. When the crowd came to the Kazekage's office, they only saw an empty room, but the third Kazekage himself was nowhere to be seen. Chapter 26. Promotion. Squad Leader of Umbu Squad 6. The mysterious disappearance of the third Kazekage caused Sunagakure to shift its attention to the search. And Sasori, who defected overnight, killed the pursuing team and blood stained the yellow sand. Thus the name Akisan no Sasori, Sasori of the Red Sand, appeared. No one connected Sasori's escape with the third Kazekage's disappearance. As time passed for another 2 days, Sunagakure, which had been turned upside down, finally realized that the third Kazekage had really disappeared. At the same time, Sarutobi Ryo, who had returned to Konoha, had been treated all the way, and his injuries had completely healed. With Sarutobi Ryo's return, the specific details of the mission were described. When the remains of Akatsuchi were presented, what Sarutobi Ryo had done detonated the entire upper echelons of Konoha, killing the Tsuchikige's son with his own strength. The impact of this matter would probably affect most of the ninja world. When the Tsukikige learned that his favored second son had been killed, and heard what kind of actions Konoha and Sunagakure would take after connecting, Yuditane Koharu, Mikoto Hamura, and others were very shocked by this. Obviously, they felt a trace of trouble with Sarutobi Ryo's improvement in strength. The Konoha high-level officials formulated a plan overnight, dispatching many ninjas to be stationed on the border of the Land of Fire, constantly guarding against the actions of Iwagakure. On the other side, they also actively contacted Sunagakure, waiting for the third Kazekage's reply. However, the Konoha high-level officials did not know at this time that Sunagakure had already become a mess. When they were waiting for a reply, Iwagakure also learned the news. The name Sarutobi Ryo, like a gust of wind, began to blow towards the entire ninja world. In addition to the propaganda from Sunagakure and Konoha, almost all ninja villages knew about the death of the Sasuke's son, young master. That night, Yamanaka Kei rushed in. Having obtained first-hand information, she immediately came to report. Now the news is flying everywhere. Everyone knows the name of the Black Reaper, Sarutobi Ryo. This time, Namake's Minato has been suppressed. Sarutobi Ryo's face was without joy or sorrow. He was sitting on a chair and continuing to wipe the Kusanagi sword. Each Kusanagi sword has its own unique name and function. After a few days of research, he had initially learned the function of this blade. This sword is 3 feet long, extremely slender, and a bit like Kirigakure's long sword Nuabari. The surface of the blade is exquisite and translucent, shimmering with a watery cold light. It can be confirmed that its material is incomparably hard. Even if he used all his strength to strike and cut, he would not be able to damage it in the slightest, which fully conforms to the system's recognition. In addition, the sharpness of this sword is also above ordinary weapons. Cutting a kunai is as easy as playing. In addition, its cold characteristic is very suitable for conducting ice release chakra, which can be said to be like a fish in water. Ice release chakra originally has the effect of freezing. Cooperating with this Kusanagi sword can even unleash more powerful and precise moves, as well as realize new functions. What about the high-level officials? Sarutobi Ryo put down the sword blade and asked about the issue he was most concerned about. Hokage-sama is waiting for young master in the Hokage office. Yamanaka Kei spoke of the summons from the high-level officials. After Sarutobi Ryo joined Umbu, he had performed many Umbu missions and had a brilliant record. Now he has killed the Tsuchike's son and also contributed to the connection between Konoha and Sunagakure. In terms of both emotion and reason, this kind of qualification is qualified to receive a promotion. So, it's most likely for this matter. Understood. Sarutobi Ryo got up and soon went to the Hokage building with Yamanaka Kei. As soon as he entered the office, he saw Hatake Tsukumo with a smile on his face. Ryo-sama, congratulations. Obviously, Hatake Tsukumo had already learned the news in advance. Sarutobi Hiruzen was also beaming, looking forward to the alliance with Sunagakure in his heart. Even Buwako, who had a very serious expression, rarely showed a gentle expression, obviously too satisfied with the performance of her eldest son. The only ones with ugly faces were Yuditane Koharu and Mikoto Hamura. Dan's, on the other hand, was silent, still extremely scheming, making it impossible for people to see what he was thinking. Sarutobi Ryo, this mission, you completed it very well, very well. Sarutobi Hiruzen got up, took out a scroll, and wrote Sarutobi Ryo's appointment on it. Starting tonight, you will be the squad leader of Umbu Squad 6. Congratulations, Ryo-sama. 77. Section 77. The Sea Country couple beside them offered their congratulations on his appointment. They had no complaints about this decision. After spending time with Sarutobi Ryo, they believed he was fully capable of handling the position. Facing the congratulations, Sarutobi Ryo couldn't help but smile. Before him, the system's prompts were clearly visible. Will a fire system main quest? Path of the Hokage. Infuse the Umbu of Konoha with the will of fire. Main quest goal. Pass the Umbu exams before the start of the Third Shinobi World War and ultimately become the leader of Umbu Squad 6. Quest reward. Real power. You can fulfill one request within the scope of the duties of the leader of Umbu Squad 6. Quest completed. Then, the next stage of the quest changed. Will of Fire System current main quest. Path of the Hokage. Save Hitaki Tsukumo and comprehend the true meaning of the Will of Fire. Current main quest goal. Help someone to the end. Survive the Third Shinobi World War. Become the Jonin Squad leader. And ultimately help Hitaki Tsukumo become the 4th Hokage. Quest reward. Real power just as everyone was congratulating Sarutobi Ryo. An Umbu member entered from outside, delivering a message. After hearing it, Sarutobi Hiruzen's expression changed drastically. Soon, he said to everyone, I'm afraid the situation will become even more complicated. Why? The 3rd Kazekage has disappeared. Everyone! Exclamation point. At the same time, in the distant Sunagakure village, deep underground at night, in a secret location, the 3rd Kazekage sat cross-legged, listening quietly to Iken's report. Iken knelt on one knee, fully recounting the events of the past few days. When Sasori poisoned him, the person who went to the office was not Iken, because Iken had not yet returned to the village at that time. Because she was familiar with her master's appearance and voice, Maki used the transformation technique to disguise herself as Iken, cooperating with the 3rd Kazekage to put on this charade. And the guilty Sasori could not tell that Iken was an imposter in a short time. After Sasori left, the 3rd Kazekage immediately entered the prepared secret room. Yes, I understand. He nodded, not surprised by the chaos in the village. Through Iken and Maki as his eyes and ears, he could understand everything without going out. As for the person who drank the tea at that time, it was just a shadow clone. Kazuka-sama, forgive my ignorance, but I don't understand the meaning of doing this. Iken looked up at the man before her. The 3rd Kazekage smiled coldly and said, If we don't do this, how can we eliminate the internal parasites of the village? Just watch. The show will begin soon. Chapter 27. Iken is the Kazekage. Sarutobi Ryo's Wangshu, Sword the Land of Wind, is a barren country. Sunagakure village, located within it, is full of wind and sand. The limited oasis is the foundation upon which the people of the Land of Wind and Sunagakure village depend for survival. And in such a limited resource environment, many parasites have still grown. Back then, the young 3rd Kazekage could only win over the elders of the various clans in order to secure his position as Kazekage. As time passed, he never forgot to cultivate and became the strongest Kazekage. In contrast, the elders became increasingly hateful. Only Chiyo, Ibiz, and a few others still adhered to their original intentions. And with the death of Chiyo's son and daughter-in-law, having seen too much darkness, she slowly began to lose heart and feel despair for the future of the village. This also shows that Sunagakure village is gradually declining. As a Kazekage, inheriting the teachings of the 1st and 2nd Kazekage, the leader of a village, the 3rd Kazekage believed that the village could not continue to decline like this. He had to find a way to reform it. In the past, he tried various means, but he could only temporarily suppress these elders and prevent them from going too far. But the 3rd Kazekage knew very well that once he fell, those elders would stretch out their claws again to take away Sunagakure village's already meager benefits. After meeting and talking with the diplomatic personnel from Konoha, the 3rd Kazekage finally made up his mind to thoroughly clean up Sunagakure village. On the surface, he couldn't directly touch those elders because the families were too deeply involved. Therefore, he needed to secretly plan and let them seek their own death. This plan was to take advantage of Sasori's attempt to harm him and pretend to disappear. In fact, he was secretly observing the ugliness of the elders. When these elders confirmed that he had completely disappeared and began to slowly inflate and act recklessly to a certain extent, it would be the moment when he would make a thunderous comeback and remove them with lightning speed. But doing so would cause some major problems. The ones who betrayed the village were only the elder level and some of the upper levels. The middle and lower level ninjas were truly willing to sacrifice themselves for the benefit of the village. This political reform would cause many people to die, and these bloody poems would be the best evidence to accuse the elders. Iken, for the future of the village, I have no choice but to do this. The third Kazekage lowered his eyelids, a trace of heaviness flashing in his eyes. The death of Itsuchikige's son, his own disappearance. The connection of various events would become the fuse for the Third Shinobi World War. Or rather, the last straw that broke the camel's back. The upper levels all knew that the Second Shinobi World War was not the end. The 5 major countries that divided the interests of the small countries would launch a new war after digesting the benefits. When the plan is completed, I will personally resign and take the blame. And at that time, you will be the next Kazekage. Kazekage-sama. After listening to the third Kazekage's analysis of the pros and cons, Iken lowered her head deeply. For the arrival of a new era, bloodshed and sacrifice were necessary. Next, listen carefully. The third Kazekage began to instruct Iken on the various arrangements during his absence. Iken repeatedly said yes. Finally, the third Kazekage handed a scroll to Iken. It contained all the insights of the second Kazekage and his cultivation of magnet release. Although Iken could not learn magnet release, but after reading these contents, she would inevitably have new inspirations and take a step further on the path of cultivation. Go! After entrusting everything, the third Kazekage issued an order to leave. Iken got up and bowed her head as she retreated. As a ninja of Sunagakure, and even more so as a hero of Sunagakure, she would do her best for Sunagakure Village until her death. For Sunagakure Village, a brand new future. A few days later, the root ninjas sent by Dans brought back new intelligence. After continuous investigation, and even losing several good hands, the situation in Sunagakure Village became clearer and clearer. A large number of Sunagakure Village ninjas have been frantically active throughout the land of Wind these days. They seem to be looking for something, because if it was just a military exercise, it would be impossible to be so scattered, and it would be impossible to mobilize almost everyone working in shifts without rest. Finally, taking advantage of the chaos in Sunagakure Village, a spy who sneaked into it brought back a definite intelligence. The third Kazekage has indeed disappeared. At the same time, other villages also learned about this matter one after another. The disappearance of the strongest Kazekage made many villages begin to stir. After the last war, many villages believed that their village could make unprecedented achievements in the future. The war preparedness meetings of the various villages began. Konoha, Hokage Building, first floor conference room. Early in the morning, Sarutobi Ryo and Hatake Sakumo came here. Looking at the sword blade in front of him, which was entirely crystal blue, with a faint glow as clear as autumn water, and the sword body connected to the hilt, without a sword guard, and faintly exuding a chilling aura. Hatake Sakumo couldn't help but nod in praise. What a good sword. I have seen Orochimaru's Kusanagi sword. This sword may be no less than that Kusanagi sword. Hatake Sakumo is indeed an expert in using swords. He saw the essence of this sword at a glance. Sakumo-sensei, this may be one of the Kusanagi swords. Sarutobi Ryo smiled. Each Kusanagi sword has its own name. Although it has been lost for a long time, it should have a new name. In the lost chapters, Sarutobi Ryo did not find more records of the Kusanagi sword, so he decided to name it himself. Let's call it Wangshu Sword 78, Section 78, Wangshu. Kakashi Sakumo couldn't help but think of the third Hokage's love for calligraphy. He felt that this name, full of poetic charm, was very suitable. Also, Ryo-sama, your position is now even higher than mine, Kakashi Sakumo said with a smile. Kakashi Sakumo is currently the squad leader of the Umbu directly under the Hokage, but Sarutobi Ryo is the leader of Umbu Squad 6. Clearly, Sarutobi Ryo's position has already surpassed Kakashi Sakumo, although Kakashi Sakumo's strength is even greater. A higher position brings power, means functions, authority. This time, the Jonin squad meeting will be attended by all the prominent figures in Konoha's upper echelons, including the heads of various clans, the leaders of various departments, and the best among the Jonin. Sarutobi Ryo, as the leader of Umbu Squad 6, has long since broken away from the identity of an ordinary Jonin and is naturally qualified to participate. And Sarutobi Ryo, taking advantage of this opportunity, is preparing to appeal for something at the meeting. According to the system's prompts, the reward for completing the previous main quest probably can make it a reality. Chapter 28. Sarutobi Ryo, Kohoryudatain, what do you know? Soon after, everyone arrived one after another. Ryo-sama, a ninja with a pineapple-shaped hairstyle, greeted Sarutobi Ryo. Shikaku. Sarutobi Ryo nodded to him. The ninja in front of him, who is only a few years older than himself, was the leader of the Nara clan. Nara Shikaku. Yamanaka Inoichi and Akimichi Choza, who were behind him, also greeted him one after another. The three clan heads of Inoshikacho were all present. They were vassals of the Sarutobi clan and also well-known clans in Konoha. Looking at the quest prompt, the current main quest objective is to experience the Third Shinobi World War and help Kakashi Tsukumo become the fourth Hokage. And he himself must become the Jonin squad leader. In the original work, this position belonged to Nara Shikaku. During the Second Shinobi World War, the previous squad leader was Tsunade. After Tsunade left, this position was temporarily vacant. It hasn't been settled yet, but seeing Nara Shikaku, Sarutobi Ryo knew who to compete with. Nara Shikaku's combat power is known for his clever mind and in-release shadow secret technique. His absolute combat power is not high, but his shrewd mind makes it easy to obtain achievements. So, his strength should not be underestimated. It's just that, as a vassal of the Sarutobi clan, isn't Nara Shikaku really siding with himself? Looking at Minato Namikaze on the side, Sarutobi Ryo had some guesses in his mind. Times are changing, and some things are also changing. Maybe Inoshikacho will also change. Cough, cough. The old father, Sarutobi Hiruzen, coughed and stopped everyone's conversation. Everyone, I believe many of you already know the news of the third Kazekage's disappearance. A stone stirred up 1,000 waves. Many Jonin from civilian backgrounds showed surprise, revealing the scarcity of their information channels. The heads of various clans and departments, however, looked as usual, apparently already knowing about this. With the disappearance of the third Kazekage, militant factions in various countries have raised their heads one after another. Even within the Land of Fire, it has become unstable. Recently, ninjas from various countries have repeatedly roamed the borders, starting to collect information. The attitudes of surrounding countries are also becoming more and more tough. With Sarutobi Hiruzen's description, everyone guessed that a new Shinobi World War was about to break out. Are we going to war again? Sarutobi Hiruzen. If the Third Shinobi World War breaks out, it must be a continuation of the last war. We have discussed this in many meetings before, and I believe everyone is mentally prepared. Saying that, Kohoryudatain, Hamura Mitokado, and other high-level officials showed smiles. Everyone, the opportunity to make meritorious deeds has arrived. Sarutobi Ryo sat under the stage, watching the crowd who were excited because of a word from the high-level officials, and couldn't help but shake his head secretly. The last war ended with the victory of the 5 major countries. This made the 5 major countries feel inflated. The 5 major ninja villages felt that they were capable and wanted to create a great future. As a result, the Third Shinobi World War became a meat grinder and became the most tragic war. The Third Shinobi World War had no winner. Everyone lost. It was a battle that fully proved that the meat eaters are short-sighted and everyone is a fool. It confirms the saying, how can we do a good job of the will of fire with this group of vermin? Then, Danzo said, currently, the position of Jonin squad leader is still vacant. Everyone must work hard. Making meritorious deeds and climbing the ladder of power are equivalent to injecting a powerful stimulant into everyone. And when the war really breaks out, everyone will know. This time, it's not the kind of development they imagined at all. Also, the Konoha high-level officials want to support Minato Namikaze as Hokage, so they will inevitably assign a strategist. That supporting person is probably Nara Shikuko. Just like when Naruto became Hokage in the original work, the advisor was Shikamaru. Sarutobi Ryo thought while listening to the upper echelon's narration. After listening to a bunch of arrangements, Sarutobi Ryo stood up. Hokage-sama, I propose to expand the organization of Umbu Squad 6. Umbu Squad 6 is a legendary Umbu squad. Many famous characters have served in this Umbu squad, including Kakashi, Yamato, Yugao Yuzuki in later generations, and even Itachi Uchiha's temporary affiliation. At this moment, he is already the leader of this squad. At most, he can lead 8 people. This organization, not too much, is really not enough to toss around. To realize his plan, he needs a lot of manpower, and the quota of 8 people is far from enough. Regarding funding, I have my own industry, so I don't need the village to issue activity funds. Sarutobi Ryo spoke again, eliminating a consideration for the high-level officials. Sarutobi Hiruzen nodded upon hearing this, feeling that the problem was not big, and immediately granted Sarutobi Ryo's request. Also, Sarutobi Ryo changed the subject. Hokage-sama, high-level officials. This time, Sarutobi Ryo turned his gaze to Konoha Fire, Danzo, and them. I propose to let the ninjas of the Hyuga clan join my Umbu Squad 6. Hyuga Hayashi, Hyuga Hizashi. The Hyuga brothers, sitting under the stage, had their eyes narrowed and their expressions changed. The Hyuga clan has never joined Umbu before, including the Uchiha clan as well. On the one hand, the Konoha high-level officials do not want to reuse the Hyuga. On the other hand, the Konoha high-level officials hope to use this so-called equal treatment for the Dojutsu clan to control the Uchiha and prevent the Uchiha from entering the center of Konoha. The Byakugan of the Hyuga clan has the most excellent auxiliary observation ability. It can definitely be useful in Umbu's activities. I propose to let Hyuga Ruri join Umbu Squad 6. Sarutobi Ryo's words sparked a discussion among everyone below. Whispering voices kept ringing out. Hyuga Hayashi immediately felt like he was sitting on pins and needles. Hyuga Hizashi looked at Sarutobi Ryo with a surprised gaze, and then showed a thoughtful expression. Everyone knows that Ruri is Ryo-sama's teammate. Then Ryo-sama's intention is, it's nothing more than everyone thinking too much, because Sarutobi Ryo's proposal is too unconventional. Sarutobi Ryo, do you know what you were saying? Konoha Fire put on a straight face and was the first to object. I am the leader of Umbu Squad 6. Of course I know this best. Sarutobi Ryo looked directly over, refuting without being humble or arrogant. I serve in Umbu. I contribute to Umbu. You haven't joined Umbu, what do you know? Chapter 29. Sarutobi Ryo. Hizashi, I will give Ruri happiness. Sarutobi Ryo's attitude was so strong. This scene directly made everyone's breathing stagnate. Soon, they associated Ryo-sama with the identity of the Hokage-sama's son. The crowd under the stage looked at each other, quietly waiting for the development of the situation. They were not clear whether this was a duet played by the high-level officials or what. Koharu, don't you think this proposal is very good? Sarutobi Hiruzen smiled slightly and came out to smooth things over. He had been watching his eldest son's performance during this period of time. As an old father, he was of course very happy with his eldest son's increasingly improved strength and insights. 79. Section 79. The Hyuga clan's Byakugan is indeed very suitable for reconnaissance. It's even much farther than the Yamanaka clan's reconnaissance range. How about trying to arrange for Hyuga Ruri to join Umbu Squad 6 first? Protecting the Byakugan is the Hyuga clan's mission. Everything else is irrelevant. Brother, I think it's a good idea. Suddenly, Hizashi Hyuga also joined the conversation. Lord Hokage, Ruri has been feeling depressed. Perhaps a change of environment could change her mind. The upper echelons were well aware of the Hyuga clan's main and branch family issues, and everyone understood what Hisashi Hyuga was implying. And these words were also a veiled criticism. Hisashi Hyuga's forehead veins bulged as he glared at his younger brother. He never expected his brother to make things difficult at this time. Then let's do it this way. Hiruzen Sarutobi nodded. Ruri's childhood sweetheart. If Hisashi thinks it's okay, then it definitely is. So, Sarutobi Ryo used the main quest reward from the system prompt. Complete a request within the scope of the Umbu Squad 6 captain's duties. After the meeting, Hisashi Hyuga found Sarutobi Ryo alone. Young Master Ryo, please wait. He walked over and glanced around. His brother, Hisashi Hyuga, had a gloomy face and strode away angrily. After returning, he would definitely vent his anger on himself. Hisashi Hyuga was prepared to endure his brother's anger. However, if it was for Ruri, young Master Ryo, I wonder what kind of missions Ruri will face after joining Umbu Squad 6. Hisashi Hyuga began to test the waters. He couldn't figure out the reason for Sarutobi Ryo's actions. Sarutobi Ryo put his hands behind his back and looked into the distance. Mr. Hisashi, I don't need to elaborate on the matters of your Hyuga clan. Everyone understands. Hisashi Hyuga. I don't need to say empty platitudes either. Simply put, Ruri is my teammate, and I hope she can achieve true happiness. True happiness? Hisashi Hyuga blinked, thoughtful. That's right. Sarutobi Ryo's eyes were bright as he gazed at Ruri's childhood sweetheart. Do you have the courage and ability to give Ruri happiness? Hisashi Hyuga, I don't need you to answer yes or no, because I will work hard to do what I want to do. Sarutobi Ryo stated his intentions with strong words. Transferring Ruri to his Umbu squad was only the first step. Next, he would slowly change her state of mind and thoughts. Even later, he would change the tragedy of the Branch family and even change the entire Hyuga clan. After all, the Hyuga clan is a part of Konoha and a clan in the ninja world. Ruri is even his comrade who has shared life and death. The true meaning of the Will of Fire is to protect important people or things. Ruri's life is in constant danger because of the caged bird curse, so he certainly couldn't sit idly by. I understand. After Hisashi Hyuga said these words, Sarutobi Ryo had already left, standing in place for a long time. Hisashi Hyuga pondered various things before finally leaving. Ruri's true happiness. Not long after, Konoha began to mobilize. The entire village was mobilized. Many ninjas had already been sent to the border to guard against the outbreak of war. As time passed, more and more ninjas were running on the streets. The residents of Konoha keenly sensed the change in the village's atmosphere. Some experienced old people couldn't help but think that a war was about to break out. And the diplomatic rhetoric of Sunagakure also changed constantly with the disappearance of the third Kazekage. They went from searching at the beginning to giving up, and then to denouncing Konoha and Iwagakure. They said that the people of Konoha and Iwagakure killed the third Kazekage. Under this increasingly intense public opinion, ambitious people and militarists raised their heads one after another. Friction intensified. War was imminent. One morning, Sarutobi Ryo stood in the courtyard with his hands behind his back. Soon, the Yumino couple walked in with a petite figure. Young Master Ryo. After greeting him, the two stood guard at the door. Sarutobi's old house had been completely transformed into a manor fortress from top to bottom. The current members of Umbu Squad 6 are Sarutobi Ryo himself, Yamanaka Kei, and the Yumino couple. Extra personnel include Guren, Ringo Amiri, and others. Ruri, you're here. Sarutobi Ryo turned around and looked at the girl in front of him with a gentle expression. Time flies. The girl of the past has grown into a graceful young woman, but she is still petite. Her chest is still flat, no, it still has a slight curve. Her expressionless, delicate face and yellow hairband show her emotionless, lowly setting. From today onwards, you are a member of Umbu Squad 6. Sarutobi Ryo announced. Previously, Hisashi Hyuga and Hisashi Hyuga had already informed her of this matter. Do I need to change clothes and wear a mask? Hyuga Ruri slowly raised her head, her inorganic white eyes making her look like a doll. or the kind that will leave this world at any time and go to the realm of the gods. No need. Sarutobi Ryo shook his head. It's up to you. Anything is fine. It's Umbu, but it's blatant. Not wearing the Umbu uniform or a mask. In broad daylight, in a bright and clear world, showing their true faces. This is Umbu Squad 6 led by Sarutobi Ryo. And because of this unconventional behavior, the name of Umbu Squad 6 quickly resounded throughout most of the ninja world. Everyone knows about this special team in Konoha and has different attitudes towards it. After all, not wearing a mask or a uniform is too rebellious. This also provided strong assistance for the rise of Sarutobi Ryo's name. No one in the ninja world doesn't know Sarutobi Ryo. If you're ready, let's go. Sarutobi Ryo stretched out his right hand towards Hyuga. This is an invitation and also a symbol. Clap. Hyuga hesitated for a moment, stretched out her hand, and placed her petite and slender palm on Sarutobi Ryo's palm. At this moment, something was sprouting in her heart. Inject the will of fire into Hyuga. Current progress. 5%, Chapter 30. Sarutobi Ryo. EyesNaruto. The world. In the great sandy sea of the land of wind. The ninjas of Umbu Squad 6 were running through it. A week had passed since leaving Konoha. During this week, relying on Yamanaka-Kei's perception and Hyuga alternating observation with the Byakugan, Sarutobi Ryo successfully avoided one Suna squad after another. As Umbu, it is naturally unlikely to go to the front lines, unless performing some special tasks or used as a manpower supplement in the later stages of the war. 80, Section 80 at this moment. Hyuga's mission was to infiltrate enemy territory and learn the enemy's detailed movements. This mission was assigned by Danzo, the commander of the Umbu. During wartime, the difficulty of infiltrating the enemy's interior would increase dramatically because martial law during wartime is completely different from peacetime. The team wandered around, still unable to find an opportunity to sneak into Sunagakure. But Hyuga believed that as long as they continued to wait, they would eventually discover an opening in the enemy's defenses. This night, Hyuga hid behind a rock, listening to the howling wind. In the dark night, the temperature suddenly dropped to freezing point, causing Hyuga and Yamanaka-Kei to put on thick robes. The only one who seemed different was Hyuga, who was still wearing a thin black outfit. The ice release Kekii Genkai allowed Hyuga to be fearless of the cold. A team has been discovered. At this moment, Hyuga suddenly spoke. Blue veins were all over the periphery of her inorganic eyes. This did not detract from the girl's beauty, but added a touch of different color to it. As Ruri observed, the Umbu team gradually became vigilant. The group, lying on the hillside, stared at the approaching Sunagakure team below. Judging from the huge scrolls on their backs, they should be a logistics team responsible for supplies. For this kind of team, if it is ordinary supplies, it is generally not escorted by experts. As the pupils of his right eye contracted, Hyuga saw a girl who looked somewhat similar to Noera Rin. It's Pakura's disciple. The next moment, the system popped up a prompt. Will of Fire System. New Will of Fire Weapon. Maki. Side mission objective. Inject the Will of Fire into Maki. Side mission reward. Magnet release possibility. Magnet release? Hyuga frowned slightly. Having had the system for such a long time, Hyuga could be considered to have a little understanding of the system. The meaning of this mission reward, magnet release, does not necessarily mean that Maki possesses this Kekii Genkai, but it is very likely that Maki knows information about magnet release. Considering that the second Kazekage invented the magnet release Kekii Genkai that humans can use, the third Kazekage carried it forward, and Raza inherited it, these developments. The meaning is likely to refer to where Maki knows the magnet release information is located. That is, the location of Sunagakure's confidential information. That's probably how it is. Young master, what do we do? Yamanaka-Kei immediately asked. They had seen this kind of transport team N times in the past week. In order not to startle the snake, every time they bypassed or dodged it. After all, Infiltrating deep into the enemy's territory was to obtain confidential information, not to engage in some kind of supply line cutting operation. Attack them and leave all of them alive. Hokage Ryo quickly got up, his figure stepped on the ground, splashing yellow sand, and the whole person swooped down like a goshawk. Although he didn't quite understand. But Yamanaka still greeted Hokage and the Yumino couple to take action. As Pakura's disciple, it is normal to perform this kind of transportation task. According to the original work, Maki's absolute combat power is not strong, but her sealing technique talent is extremely high. In the original Naruto Shippuden, the cloth binding technique that sealed the reanimation jutsu was developed by Maki, specifically to target the undead. She promoted this technique, allowing all the allied shinobi forces to use it. More importantly, the learning difficulty of the cloth binding technique is only C rank. This makes Maki's talent very heaven-defying. Adding the system's prompt and Maki's special identity, Hokage Ryo instructed Yamanaka and the others to directly leave them alive. Bang! Hokage Ryo landed steadily. The transport team, where Maki was located, looked at the suddenly appearing black figure, first froze for a moment, and put on a posture to resist the enemy. The next moment, someone trembled all over and looked terrified. It's the Black Reaper. Hokage Ryo had been to Sunagakure and had experienced so many Umbu missions, each time without wearing a mask, and he was the son of the Hokage, with a prominent family background. Some time ago, he even killed the second son of its Hokage, Inoki. Many experiences have been superimposed, making Hokage Ryo famous. Are you going to surrender, or am I going to do it? Hokage Ryo scanned a few people and asked lightly. Forget it. With a swoosh, Wangshu's sword was unsheathed. The next moment, the cold wind rushed in. The water-like flowing blade attacked everyone. How strong is Hokage Ryo? Among the Jonin, he is also a very powerful existence. Therefore, without reacting, a few people were respectively fixed in place by a faint sword. The petite girl, like Noera Rin, subconsciously took a few steps back with a look of fear. What did you do to them? I saw that the three teammates were in a trance, or completely solidified on the spot. The night wind was blowing, but the three of them did not move, but their breathing still existed. It's nothing, I just used ice release chakra to slow down their thinking or nerve conduction. Hokage Ryo shook his head and looked at the girl with no fighting power who tremblingly raised a kunai and couldn't help but feel a little interesting. As expected of Pakura's disciple, you have courage. But looking at your reaction, you should know my strength from your master. You're not my opponent. Ice release chakra is mainly based on frostbite and sharpness. But with Wangshu, this Kusanagi sword, it can exert magical effects. By injecting ice release chakra into the Kusanagi sword and projecting it into other people's bodies, it can produce the desired effects such as slowing down, numbness, and frostbite. Specific control is more difficult. Hokage Ryo has only developed this function so far. The system prompt and reward prompt that popped up on Hokage Natsu's body on the day Noera Rin graduated confirmed the direction of the next stage of cultivation. Chakra control. Normal ninjas' chakra control is completely incomparable to the Hokage clans. Most Jonin can only release chakra from the soles of their feet and palms. Powerful Hokage clan ninjas can release it from all the acupoints of their body. This is like the difference between a human pianist and a monkey playing the piano. Maki screamed and rushed over with the mentality of embracing death as if going home. However, Hokage Ryo just casually feinted a sword. Slowing down and numbness penetrated the meridians near her brain. Let the flowing chakra slow down, even close to freezing. Finally, in the eyes of Yamanaka and the others, the girl in front of them suddenly slowed down, slower and slower, and even solidified in the wind. Chapter 31. Noera Rin? Maki. 81. Section 81. Many ninjas set up seals in their minds, whether it's a Jinjutsu type or a jutsu similar to a small barrier. The purpose is to protect information from flowing out of the brain. It shouldn't be Pakura who did it. Sarutobi Ryo shook his head. not thinking Pakura would do such a thing. Before being betrayed, Pakura loved the people like her own children. As a hero of Sunagakure, she basically wouldn't do such unheroic things. At least someone would do it for her. Considering Maki's sealing jutsu talent, it's likely she set up the brain barrier herself. Whether it's the official manga or the official novel, they all show the troublesome nature of setting up barriers in the brain. Even Yamanaka Inoichi would need to expend a great deal of energy and the assistance of many people to break the sealing jutsu that Pain casually left in the brain of a Rain Village extra ninja. Yamanaka Kei is Yamanaka Inoichi's cousin, so there's no need to doubt her skills. But without dedicated machine assistance or help from others, it's impossible to unlock the jutsu in Maki's brain in a short amount of time. So what should we do? Everyone was in a difficult position. Interrogating for information isn't just about directly digging into the brain. Just then, Sarutobi Ryo pointed his finger, and the ice-release chakra dissipated, and Maki's eyes regained clarity. The first thing she did when she woke up was to counterattack, but she found 3 of her companions lying on the ground, their lives hanging in the balance. This made her hesitate. Sarutobi Ryo said, "If you want to protect the lives of these 3 companions, then obediently tell me the information." Maki widened her eyes, clearly filled with surprise, and, as if saying, "You're despicable." Afterward, she showed an expression as if she was ready to die. The ninjas of Sunagakure are not afraid of death. In order to protect her village, even sacrifice was acceptable. Young Master Ryo. The ninjas of Sunagakure have grown up in harsh environments since childhood, and their willpower is generally amazing. The Yumino couple reminded him that harsh environments produce Suna ninjas. These people are not easy to deal with. Yeah, Sarutobi Ryo certainly knew this, or rather, he understood Suna more than most Konoha ninjas. As a fireologist, what is it that Sarutobi Ryo doesn't understand? Jiraiya believed that a ninja is someone who can endure. For example, in the original work, when Hate Gecko used a knife to slash Baki, Baki didn't even frown, which is an example. Ninja, those who restrain themselves. Even in injustice, they can endure. That is the way of a ninja. As Sarutobi Ryo said this, Maki's eyes slowly widened, because this sentence is the teaching of the Kazekage-sama. How could a Konoha ninja know this? I know you better than you think. Sarutobi Ryo reached out and directly grabbed Maki's collar. Now, I'll give you a choice. If you want your 3 companions to live, then obediently listen to my instructions. Sarutobi Ryo chose to change lanes. He didn't continue to ask Maki to tell him the information about Sunagakure. Instead, he planned to disguise himself as a Suna ninja and infiltrate Sunagakure village with Maki. In this way, he would go deep behind enemy lines. But that's too dangerous. Young Master Ryo. The Yumino couple couldn't help but exclaim. Even they couldn't think of such a bold adventure. Sometimes you have to take risks. Sarutobi Ryo looked at the others. Everyone, I'll leave this place to you for now. Oomph. Maki's expression changed from astonishment to determination. She snorted coldly, and her expression became firm. Obviously, she agreed to Sarutobi Ryo's conditions. But she decided that once she returned to the village, she would send an alarm to all her companions, even if it meant sacrificing her own life. After all, if they could kill the son of the Hokage, it would definitely play a huge role in changing the situation of the war. Let's go. Using the transformation technique to disguise himself as a Suna ninja, Sarutobi Ryo disappeared into the vast night with Maki. Yamanaka Kei turned her head and looked at the Byakugan girl, whose eyes were moving slightly, and couldn't help but ask gently, "Ruri, are you worried about young master?" The Byakugan girl was silent. After a moment, she nodded. In her life from childhood to adulthood, the 2 teammates were the rare warmth she could feel. So, don't worry. Young master now possesses 3 bloodline limits. He is a rare powerhouse. Yamanaka Kei comforted her. Chapter 32. Maki, I want you to become a firewall weapon. In the vast night, 2 travelers stood at the entrance of a crescent-shaped oasis. Even though it was night, it was still brightly lit here. This oasis gathers many wealthy people and tourists who are curious about the desert scenery. The purpose is to experience those things that are prohibited in ordinary cities, gambling, or some crazy adult nightlife. It can be said that this is a luxurious oasis of extravagance. Strictly speaking, it is the ultimate enhanced version of Konoha's Tanzaku Street, and this place is neither the territory of the ninjas, nor is it completely under the control of the daimyo. The dignitaries of the Land of Wind and the nobles of Sunagakure jointly divided this oasis. In simple terms, it is a no-man's land. Many of the legal provisions of Sunagakure and the Land of Wind will lose their effect here. The only thing that is useful is the power brought by money and power. And this oasis also symbolizes the darkest places in the Land of Wind and Sunagakure Village. One of the main scenes in the official novel Gara Haiden is this crescent-shaped oasis. This is the officially designated corrupt area of this country. What are you doing here? Maki glanced at Sarutobi Ryo, who was disguised as a companion. The girl's eyes filled with disgust. At first, she thought that this young master would directly enter Sunagakure. Could it be that you haven't taken a bath for a long time? Maki mocked. The Konoha ninja, who ran to the Land of Wind, must be confused. I know water release. Waterfall technique. Sarutobi Ryo glanced at her and answered calmly, not annoyed. Water release. Waterfall technique is a C-rank ninjutsu. In the original Shippuden, when Yamato assisted Naruto in his training, that artificial waterfall was created using this technique. As long as there is an underground water source, the jutsu will take effect, thereby breaking open the land and bringing out the water source. So, as long as a ninja knows this ninjutsu, there is no need to worry about dying of thirst, and taking a bath is even less of a problem. Hearing this, Maki immediately shut up, because saying any more will be boring. Soon, under Sarutobi Ryo's strong demands, Maki used the transformation technique and entered a high-end hotel with Sarutobi Ryo, who had changed his appearance again. Maki, who had lived in the poor Sunagakure village since she was a child, had never seen such a luxurious scene. Whether it was the waiters in suits or the luxurious lobby of the hotel, they made her feel a little dizzy and extremely uncomfortable. What exactly do you want? Following Sarutobi Ryo to a table, she sat down. Sarutobi Ryo casually ordered some high-end food and drinks. Then, in Maki's gaze, he began to slowly enjoy dinner. In your Sunagakure village, the material environment is poor, and even the Kazekage is very frugal in his food, clothing, and expenses. Sarutobi Ryo said casually, making Maki vaguely feel a trace of ominousness. Here, it is extravagant, and casually picking out a person, their life is more luxurious than the Kazekage. Have you ever considered why? Konoha has Hamura Midokado, Kohu Yuditane, and Danzo, 3 turd stirs. They represent the interests of the vast majority of families. And there are more than a dozen such turd stirs in Sunagakure village. In the original work, Raza even sacrificed Pakura in the end in order to compromise with the interests of the elders. At this point, the encounters of Rin Yujito and Tsukumo Hatake can't be said to be completely similar. They can only be said to be exactly the same. Half of the assets here are owned by the elders of your Sunagakure village, and it can also be said that they are the interests of many high-ranking families. Hearing Sarutobi Ryo's explanation, Maki opened her eyes in disbelief. She subconsciously wanted to refute, but couldn't help but think of the third Kazekage-sama's plan, expelling the elders. So that's the reason. The grassroots ninjas of your Sunagakure fight and kill every day, and even eating is a problem. The elders and their families are extravagant and enjoy material desires more luxurious than the Kazekage. 82. Section 82, we're starting over here. While they're decked out in gold and jewels. The blackest humor, nothing surpasses this. So what do you think? What are the chances of your Sand Village winning in this shinobi world war? Sarutobi Ryo's lips curled up in a mocking smile. With such a group of upper echelon trash, how could the Sand Village be good? Even if what you say is true, that's an internal problem for our Sand Village. It's not your place as an outsider to interfere. Maki's little face flushed red. Clearly unable to find a suitable rebuttal, she could only firmly state that she was a staunch inheritor of the will of sand. Sarutobi Ryo wasn't surprised by Maki's reaction. After all, in the original story, Pakura was screwed over by Raza and the Sand Village's upper echelons. Maki was the type who could say, "Let Pakura give up her hatred, forgive, tomorrow will be better, everyone is working hard. Teacher, you must believe in us." But wouldn't mention reform. This behavior is similar to someone else. Later, everyone saw it. That person didn't fulfill his promise to Konin and Nagato to bring peace to the Rain Village. On the contrary, the Rain Village eventually became a ruin. Hilarious. And in the official novels, the Sand Village didn't change at all afterward either. The Elder Council remained the Elder Council. Maki was still a small fry, and Pakura probably still died in the end. Next, Sarutobi Ryo didn't speak, but instead leisurely ate his dinner. His astonishing appetite left Maki dumbfounded. After the plates were stacked high, Sarutobi Ryo elegantly wiped the corners of his mouth with a silk cloth. After that, he took Maki in the elevator directly to the top floor, to a suite. The highest standard suite, extremely luxurious. The amount of money it would cost for one night can be imagined. Of course, Sarutobi Ryo wasn't deliberately squandering, but rather because this place was a no man's land. In terms of secrecy, it was the safest. Even the Sand Village's ninjas wouldn't be able to find this place. So, certain things could be carried out in secret. Just as Maki was still looking around the room's layout, Malice suddenly arose from behind her, hair standing on end. Maki subconsciously turned around and met Sarutobi Ryo's cold face. I said before, interrogation doesn't necessarily require directly prying open the brain. There are other methods. The system prompt in his right eye's retina was exceptionally clear. Inject the will of fire into Maki. Reward. Magnet release possibility. She was thrown by Sarutobi Ryo onto a certain piece of furniture in the bedroom. Her body bounced violently a few times. Before Maki could react, some special tools prepared for guests in the hotel, ropes, bound Maki's hands and feet. Maki! Exclamation point. The next second, in Maki's terrified gaze, the Sarutobi clan's summoning weapon, adamantine staff, slowly rose. Chapter 33. Injecting the will of fire into Maki. The girl before him was slightly smaller and more slender than Noera Rin. Her chestnut hair was also a lighter color than Noera Rin's hair. Because she was born in the Sand Village, her personality seemed particularly resilient. How should I put it? She was a Sand Village version of Noera Rin. Noera Rin was a disciple of Namake's Minato. Maki was a disciple of Pakura, which also corresponded in some way. As a substitute, it's still possible. Maki didn't hear Sarutobi Ryo's murmur clearly, because she was currently shocked by the Sarutobi clan's unique summoning weapon that Sarutobi Ryo had summoned. As a ninja, she still understood some basic common sense. After seeing it with her own eyes, she could immediately judge what was about to happen. Before she could open her mouth, Sarutobi Ryo's gaze became even colder. Interrogation. Start. The next second, Sarutobi Ryo attacked fiercely, instantly unleashing taijutsu. ZZZT. The fierce attack directly caused Maki's small body to tremble. Ugh. Maki stared fixedly at the ceiling, suffering unspeakable pain from the sudden attack. Crimson blood flowed out, dripping down. Sarutobi Ryo didn't use steel release Kekei Genkai to enhance the power of his taijutsu. The reason was simple. With Maki's quality, using steel release would probably kill her directly. The so-called tailoring the punishment to fit the individual. Different individuals, of course, have different sentences. So, Sarutobi Ryo attacked again, using taijutsu, even without relying on steel release Kekei Genkai. The quality brought by his own Sarutobi clan bloodline was enough to make her hover on the edge of death. The night deepened. The Third Shinobi World War had just begun, with ninjas from various countries fighting. And Sarutobi Ryo was also working hard. In the New Moon Oasis, a place of extravagance and dissipation, where the sand village's ninjas' hands and feet couldn't reach. Sarutobi Ryo was safely conducting his interrogation. Bang! Bang! Sarutobi Ryo constantly used taijutsu. Maki's body trembled repeatedly from the beating. After a while, she finally realized what had happened. Realizing this, she couldn't help but let out a piercing scream that echoed through the dome. Ah! The sound was deafening. Her fear and sadness were so clear. The cold-blooded interrogator continued to beat her, constantly striking the girl with his summoning weapon. The so-called being hoisted by one's own petard. The Sand Village's Elder Council had built such a corrupt area, which also meant that it was impossible for the Sand Village's ninjas to supervise it. Which is to say, even if you scream your lungs out, no one will come to save you. This is the truth, Sarutobi Ryo said, staring at the girl in front of him who was shedding tears and screaming. Ugh! The next second, Sarutobi Ryo increased the force of his interrogation, and the amplitude of his taijutsu became even more exaggerated, swift, and fierce. The so-called not changing one's expression, even when Mount Tai collapses in front of one's eyes, is because most enemies have not seen a real mountain collapse. Now, Maki would understand what real terror was. It wasn't just being probed in the brain by a secret technique that was called fear. Humanity's deepest malice and darkness were the true faces of fear. Bang! 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 The interrogation continued. Sarutobi Ryo constantly used various taijutsu moves, and the terrifying interrogation methods completely overwhelmed the Sand Village's girl. I don't know how much time had passed. The outside was covered in stars, and Sarutobi Ryo's interrogation had also reached the end of stage. In the constant torture, Maki, who had never seen these interrogation methods, coupled with Sarutobi Ryo's constant verbal attacks, finally completely broke down. She trembled, stammered, and cried as she told some secrets. But she refused to say the rest no matter what. Sarutobi Ryo knew that this was probably the limit of the interrogation. Unsurprisingly, he obtained information about magnet release. According to Maki, her teacher, Pakura's house had a scroll of books that contained information about magnet release. Without thinking, he knew it was bestowed by the Kazekage. Pakura had achieved great feats and made great contributions to the Sand Village. The Kazekage's magnet release would always need someone to inherit it. That is, there would be open auditions for inheritors. Although Pakura didn't have magnet release, she could at least draw some experience from the magnet release techniques to sublimate her own abilities. Sarutobi Ryo filled in everything himself and then used the final interrogation method. Ice release. Freezing cold air was released along with the summoning weapon. This style could be said to be ninja body technique. Sarutobi Ryo had a sudden whim and was now using it on Maki. Chi. Ugh. The terrifying cold air made Maki stunned for a moment, and then her eyes suddenly rolled upwards. In just an instant, her thinking and some bodily functions were frozen. 83. Section 83, maintaining the stance for performing the ninja body technique for a long time. A long time. Pop. Sarutobi Ryo stepped back. System notifications arrived together. However, the progress aspect was a bit interesting. Maki, 30%. In fact, many individuals don't need to reach 100% to receive the reward. As for the remaining progress, it should be hints related to favorability, obedience, and the like. In any case, there's progress with the magnet release. After confirming that Maki would have her body functions slowed down due to the ice release, meaning even if she didn't eat or drink for several days, she would remain in a low consumption state, Sarutobi Ryo directly left the suite. Once he locked the door with the key, Sarutobi Ryo completely left the hotel. This place had been rented for several days, and no one would disturb him during that time. The corruption of the Sand Village elders had instead become the best cover for his actions. Wouldn't you say that's like lifting a rock to drop it on your own feet? Before dawn arrived, Sarutobi Ryo arrived at the entrance of the Sand Village. Infiltrating the Sand Village was relatively difficult, but through interrogating Maki, Sarutobi Ryo learned of the gaps in the Sand Village's several guard posts. The Sand Village was surrounded by mountains on all sides, but that wasn't a problem. Using Earth-release ninjutsu to infiltrate and taking advantage of the guards' unpreparedness, Sarutobi Ryo successfully entered the Sand Village under the cover of darkness. There weren't many pedestrians on the dark roads. Following the shadows all the way, according to the address provided by Maki, he found Yakura's house. After entering, he only found simple living furniture, which showed Yakura's simplicity in life. In the innermost part of the room, he spotted a storage room with a ceiling jutsu. The ceiling jutsu was personally set by Maki, which showed Yakura's trust in her disciple, as well as Maki's accomplishments in sealing jutsu. Sarutobi Ryo, who already had the key, easily broke the barrier, took out the scroll, glanced at it, confirmed it was the real deal, and then put it in his pocket and left directly. From beginning to end, from infiltration to departure, Sarutobi Ryo didn't alarm anyone. Because he didn't do anything extra and only aimed to steal things, his actions were very smooth. After Sarutobi Ryo left, the sun began to rise. The residents of the Sand Village walked onto the streets, and a new day began. Chapter 34. Magnet Release Acquired. Eastern border of the Land of Wind, the front line of the Sand Village. This was the border between the Land of Wind and the Land of Rivers. Because of the existence of the Land of Rivers, Konoha and Sand formed a buffer confrontation. After the Third Shinobi World War broke out, greater friction continued to occur on the borders of various countries. It could be said that the Shinobi World War had entered its first stage. The widespread establishment of tents had become a wartime command base. In the largest camp tent in the center, Yakura sat cross-legged. The action of clasping her hands together represented that she was extracting chakra. As her cultivation progress increased, the surrounding air began to surge. It was as if wind was being produced, but it was different from normal wind-released chakra. The surrounding air fluctuated up and down, and the speed of air movement in each place was different. This was not a phenomenon that any wind release ninjutsu could cause. Yakura. Soon, an Umbu member lifted the door curtain, allowing Chiyo to walk in. It also brought in the light of dawn from outside. After reading the magnet release insights of the past Kazekages, Yakura absorbed, sorted, and digested them, and finally her strength went a step further. Yes. Yakura nodded expressionlessly, going further on the road to success. Elder Chiyo, what happened? It's like this. Chiyo began to explain the situation. Watching dawn arrive, but Maki's transport team had not appeared, Chiyo couldn't help but feel worried about this. Until the Umbu member who was sent out had a reply. The supply team was attacked, and Maki was captured by the Black Reaper Sarutobi Ryo. Yakura's eyes widened, and her heart sank. In addition to worrying about her disciple's safety, she was also afraid that Maki would fall into the hands of the enemy, thereby leaking major secrets. If others knew that the third Kazekage was still alive, then things would be terrible. What about the others? Yakura asked immediately. Lord Yakura, the remaining 3 are fine and were not injured. The Umbu member conveyed what the 3 had seen. At that time, the 3 only saw the Black Reaper appear, and then everything went dark, and they didn't know anything. When they woke up, they found that the 3 of them had been thrown back where they were, but Maki was missing. Infiltrating behind enemy lines to destroy the enemy supply lines was always the main theme. But Yakura didn't expect the people of Konoha to act so quickly. This was only the early stage of the war, and the battle hadn't fully started yet. Lord Yakura, the supplies are all there. It seems that the Black Reaper is targeting our intelligence. The Umbu member immediately explained that the supplies had not been robbed either, and that the other party was clearly after intelligence. No. Yakura immediately realized something. The other party is coming for me. Obviously, the Black Reaper knew that Maki was her disciple, not targeting the supplies, nor targeting other people, but only kidnapping Maki was to lure her into a trap. Yakura's face was a little ugly, but her mind was still stable. It was common for ninjas to be captured, Even her own disciple was no exception. Lord Yakura, what should we do next? The Umbu member was very worried that Lord Yakura would step into the enemy's trap. You must know, at the moment when the third Kazekage disappeared, Lord Yakura was the spiritual pillar of all Sand Village ninjas. With her, morale could be high. Yakura, don't be impulsive. Chiyo originally planned to say this, but considering the defection of her grandson, she closed her mouth again. Sarutobi Ryo is the son of the Hokage. It is impossible for him to ignore his Konoha colleagues. Yakura's eyes flashed with dangerous light. If the enemy suddenly attacks our rear, then we'll also go deep behind enemy lines. So-called an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. This idea is not bad. Chiyo's eyes lit up, and she felt that this was what should be done. Yakura, you go. I will temporarily leave the battlefield here to this old woman. Her son and daughter-in-law were killed. Her grandson defected. Chiyo was already very disheartened. However, considering the overall situation of the village and the fact that there might be a chance to avenge herself and kill Konoha's White Fang in this war, Chiyo was a little eager to try. At least, after killing Konoha's White Fang, she would consider retiring. Then, Elder Chiyo, I will leave everyone here to you. Yakura nodded and immediately led a small team of Umbu members out of the camp tent. At the same time, Yamanaka Ino and others had already returned to the front line base on the western land of fire on the Sand Village front. And Sarutobi Ryo, at this moment, was still in the crescent oasis of the great sand sea of the Land of Wind. After getting the scroll, Sarutobi Ryo ran all the way and couldn't wait to return to the upscale hotel. The first thing he did when he came back was to check all the contents inside. Magnet release. It was the bloodline limit that the second Kazekage invented based on the one-tailed Shikaku's magnet release that could be used by human ninjas. Strictly speaking, it belonged to a variation of Shikaku's magnet release. After all, the power of humans and tailed beasts was different. But even between humans, the same bloodline limit also had different manifestations. This scroll contained the experiences of the second and third Kazekages. The third Kazekage was known as the strongest Kazekage, and the second Kazekage was the founder. The preciousness of this scroll was self-evident. In other words, as long as a person with qualifications read this scroll, they could learn the magnet release bloodline limit. 84. Section 84 magnet release is a combination of wind plus earth attributes. Sarutobi Ryo sat in his chair, immersed in the ocean of knowledge. On the large bed, Maki rolled her eyes desperately, still lying there motionless. Sarutobi Ryo completely ignored her existence, wholeheartedly comprehending the knowledge system of magnet release. Soon, the entire scroll was read, and the various whimsical ideas inside made Sarutobi Ryo extremely amazed. Based on this knowledge record alone, the contributions of the two Kage to the development of human chakra are self-evident. Having mastered the training method, he believes that by then, he will be able to walk sideways through the entire Jonin level, and almost no one will be his opponent. Chapter 35. Pakura of Scorch Release. Swift Release plus Scorch Release. On the very night that Sarutobi Ryo was practicing magnet release, Pakura, who had been traveling for a day, crossed the river country and infiltrated the central part of the fire country with several Sand Village Umbu. Thump! A Konoha ninja knelt on the ground. 3 dried corpses were displayed beside him. The fight was ended by Pakura in an instant. At this moment, Pakura grabbed his hair and asked indifferently, "Where is Sarutobi Ryo?" The next morning, the Konoha Umbu team, led by Hitaki Sakumo, appeared at the scene of the crime. Most of the area was sealed off. In the courtyard, Hitaki Sakumo looked at the 4 corpses with a solemn expression. What terrifying methods! Several subordinates of the Umbu side, the 4 corpses in front of them had all turned into mummies, as if they had been air-dried and then baked. Of course, this world has appliances like ovens. However, the 4 corpses in front of them were somewhat different from the results caused by ovens. Hitaki Sakumo touched his chin and fell into thought. In this era, the air fryer has not been invented after all. If you had seen an air fryer, you would understand that these 4 corpses are exactly the same as the phenomenon caused by this appliance. Hot air, baking, it's Pakura of scorch release. After judging, Hitaki Tsukumo said the identity of the murderer encountered by the 4 victims. If it were simply high temperature, a large amount of oil would appear on the surface of the corpse. Therefore, only scorch release can cause this kind of air-dried, high-temperature steam result, making the corpse completely lose moisture, turning into a mummy, and the epidermis is not greasy. The terrible thing about Pakura is that the victims who are hit by scorch release die tragically, and there's almost no possibility of being rescued. Scorch release has 2 killing methods. One is this high-temperature baking, and the other is explosive damage like a high-explosive bomb. Neither is something anyone wants to experience. Pakura's age is about the same as Ryo-sama and Namikaze's Minato. All 3 young people are outstanding talents. But now, in terms of absolute lethality, she is still far ahead of the other 2. Hitaki Tsukumo made another judgment. Although Namikaze Minato knows Flying Thunder God, he only uses kunai to slit throats. I heard that he has recently invented an A-level ninjutsu, but I don't know if it will be successful. As for Ryo-sama, he is proficient in 7 attributes and possesses Kekkei Genkai, such as Ice Release, but in terms of absolute lethality, the 2 of them still cannot compare to Pakura. Therefore, if the 3 meet on a narrow road, Pakura will likely be the last survivor with a violent killing power and large-scale explosive offensive of scorch release. After all, the human body cannot withstand scorch release. Death upon being hit. You're right. At this moment, a female voice suddenly came from the roof. Hitaki Tsukumo and others looked up together. I saw a dashing, long-legged girl standing casually on the roof with one hand on her hip. Beside her, followed by a 4-man Umbu squad configuration. They all stared at Hitaki Tsukumo and others with a condescending attitude, looking at the few Konoha Umbu in front of her who were facing a formidable enemy. Pakura just glanced at them slightly, and then fixed her gaze on Hitaki Tsukumo. I'm here to find Sarutobi Ryo. Hitaki Tsukumo blinked, completely relaxed. Although Pakura is a famous young talent, as a strong man with more power than the Sannin, he does not take Pakura seriously. As for Pakura daring to kill people and still staying here without leaving, Hitaki Tsukumo was a little curious. Pakura, although you are very powerful, you should understand what your ending will be if you meet me. Hitaki Tsukumo took off his mask and said lightly. When the 4-Sand Village Umbu saw Hitaki Tsukumo's face, they couldn't help but panic. This made their previous composure seem very ridiculous. It's Konoha White Fan! Exclamations rang out among the 4. Pakura of Scorch Release, this title that resounds throughout Sand Village, is not enough to face Konoha White Fan. Of course I know, Pakura said indifferently, meeting Hitaki Tsukumo's gaze without fear. I'm just here to tell you, Konoha, I'm looking for Sarutobi Ryo. That's all. Also, since I've seen such a famous senior again, it would be a little rude not to return the favor. Pakura waved her hands, and 2 fireballs instantly appeared in her palms. These 2 fireballs look about the size of 2 adult fists stacked together. Boom! With Pakura's wave, the fireballs bent out of incredible trajectories in the air and attacked Hitaki Tsukumo at a dazzling speed. Chi! White fan blooms. Under the daylight, the silver fangs flashed past. The 2 scorch release fireballs instantly shattered and then dissipated in the air. Seeing this scene, Pakura's pupils suddenly shrank, and she already understood the terror of Hitaki Tsukumo. My scorch release is a combination of fire release and wind release chakra. When encountering wind release, it will only devour the opponent. Fire counters wind. Scorch release, because of the combination of wind plus fire, is more restrained against wind than pure fire release. In theory, it should have directly swallowed Konoha White Fang. However, the scorch release fireball was directly cut open by a single attribute wind. Pakura, who is also a wind release expert, instantly understood what was going on. Wind release practice to the extreme will produce the special effect of cutting off chakra. White Fan, this guy, is indeed extraordinary, just like in the original work. Danzo's wind release can cut off Susanoo. The ultimate wind release is the destruction of chakra. Just like Gentle Fist can cut off chakra. This is because at the microscopic level, the caster's attainments have reached an incredible level. Retreat. Pakura waved her hand and issued a retreat order. The four sand village Umbu quickly ran away. How could Hitaki Tsukumo watch them leave? Hitaki Tsukumo jumped up and onto the roof. What greeted him was a series of fireballs. Chi! Hitaki Tsukumo swung his blade, cutting open the scorch-release fireballs, and dodged several more with his swift movements. The white fangs unhesitatingly slashed towards Pakura's fair neck. Heh! Pakura smiled coldly. Her figure was as fast as lightning, and she suddenly disappeared in front of Hitaki Tsukumo. Hitaki Tsukumo turned his eyes. I saw Pakura, like a ghost, bringing up multiple afterimages in the air, and disappeared from here in the blink of an eye. By the time several Konoha Umbu jumped onto the roof, Pakura had completely disappeared. No need to chase. Hitaki Tsukumo reached out and stopped his subordinates from pursuing. We must report immediately. Pakura may have mastered a new Kekkei Genkai. It seems to be Swift Release. Chapter 36. New Bloodline Powe Cannon Bombards. Maki time flows day by day. Sarutobi Ryo sits in the oasis, constantly cultivating. When he gets tired, he directly vents on Maki, using taijutsu and nin taijutsu to beat her up and interrogate her, to see if he can get more information. After resting, he continues to separate shadow clones to practice magnet release. A week passed in the blink of an eye. During this period, no one came to investigate. From this, we can see the safety of this place and the corruption of the Sand Village elders. 85. Section 85. After the third Kazekage disappeared, Raza did not immediately take office as Kazekage. To be successfully appointed, he had to constantly appease and win over the elders. When the third Kazekage was still around, the Sand Village's elders were naturally well-behaved. After he disappeared, the elders began to reveal their true colors, and asking for exorbitant prices was commonplace. As time passed, the elders' courage and appetite grew larger and larger. The crisis within the Sand Village erupted. On the surface, the Sand Village was still strong, but in this great ninja war, they would only be absolute losers. The so-called internal and external troubles were just like this. This day's early morning, 13 shadow clones disappeared simultaneously, and all experience was fed back to the main body. Bang, bang, bang. While taking advantage of a break, Sarutobi Ryo, who was interrogating Maki, had a sudden inspiration. After a week of practice, he perfected the fusion of wind and earth and successfully created magnet release chakra. Magnet release. As Sarutobi Ryo performed the technique, his own chakra resonated with the building beneath him. Through remote sensing, he attracted the magnetic force of the earth underground, only to hear subtle sounds from some of the building materials in this luxury hotel suite. Then, the magnetic force drawn from the ground, or rather, the magnetic pole power of the earth, entered Sarutobi Ryo's body. This was a kind of leverage, using a small force to move a great weight. Sarutobi Ryo used himself as a guide, borrowing the power of the earth. Even just a negligible amount was an astronomical figure for humans. In an instant, Sarutobi Ryo, who had freeloaded on the power of the earth, felt a burst of cracking sounds from his bones and muscles. This power was temporarily condensed in Sarutobi Ryo's body, like a compressed air bomb. Therefore, he was eager to vent it from his body. If it were an ordinary person, such leverage would probably directly crush them into meat paste. But who was Sarutobi Ryo? After fusing the fourth bloodline limit, his strength directly soared to the top tier of elite jonin. Plus the powerful physique brought by his own Sarutobi clan's bloodline. He forcibly withstood this force. Next, unleashing this force would definitely be extremely fierce. If used in conjunction with taijutsu/nin taijutsu, the power would be even more multiplied. At this moment, Sarutobi Ryo's forehead veins bulged, and his face flushed red. The suppressed power in his body quickly found an outlet. Only to hear Sarutobi Ryo roar. A water-release ninjutsu was launched as a finishing move, attacking Maki. Along with the water release stream, there was also the geomagnetism borrowed from magnet release. Bang, bang, bang. It was like the roar of a cannon. The water release ninjutsu bombarded Maki. Ooh! Sarutobi Ryo, bare-chested, breathed a long sigh of relief, and the flush and veins on his face faded. Magnet release, training complete. Maki, progress, 50%. Just as Sarutobi Ryo released Maki's restraints, locked the door, and left to return to Konoha. Within a land of fire, over the past week, several Konoha teams had been attacked. Everyone knew that Pakura was the culprit and was looking for young Master Ryo. Land of Fire border, Sand Village's frontline base. Behind the camp, Hokage Sakumo was resting. After a week of confirmation, he was already convinced that Pakura had indeed learned the swift-release bloodline limit again. She had committed multiple crimes in a row. Relying on her speed that came and went without a trace, no one could catch her at all. The difficulty of swift release was, to some extent, comparable to Flying Thunder God, because this was a technique with a movement speed as fast as lightning. As long as the other party wanted to leave, unless a barrier was set up, it would be impossible to catch her. The problem was, Pakura had been famous for too long. Although young, her experience was more than Minato Namikaze and Sarutobi Ryo. She had performed countless missions completely from the bottom, bit by bit of hard work, climbing up from a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. She had an extremely keen sense of smell and was extremely cautious. So Konoha's several captures were all in vain. Is there still no news of young Master Ryo? Hokage Sakumo asked. The people under him shook their heads. Then, an Umbu walked in from outside to report. The higher-ups have decided to send the Yellow Flash and Uzumaki Kushina to target Pakura. Uzumaki Kushina? A trace of surprise flashed in Hokage Sakumo's eyes. As an orphan of the Uzumaki clan, Kushina, who was good at barrier techniques, was indeed a good choice to target Pakura, plus Minato Namikaze. Umbu. They have already set off from Konoha and will be here in less than 2 days. Hokage Sakumo. Well, that's the only way for now. Land of Fire, a secret cave. Pakura sat in the cave, continuing to practice swift release. After a period of actual combat, her speed became faster and faster. Now, she hardly caused any wind noise and could even eliminate the obstruction of air. The whole person had never been so relaxed, as if roaming freely in the world. Lady Pakura, we have continuously solved many Konoha teams. It is estimated that the Konoha higher-ups will not be able to sit still. As time went by, the risk factor for the few people staying in the Land of Fire would become higher and higher. In the end, Konoha would definitely send out targeted experts. And Umbu hesitated for a moment and said the latest information he had obtained. Maki has returned to the village. She seems to have been tortured by the Black Reaper for a long time, and her mental state has become somewhat unstable. Pakura suddenly opened her eyes, and when she heard this news, killing intent surged wildly. But the killing intent came quickly and went quickly. You guys leave first. Pakura looked at the 4 subordinates and suppressed her aura. I will stay for a while longer, and when I find Sarutobi Ryo and kill him, I will leave. Knowing that Maki was alive, but had been tortured so badly, Pakura did not intend to let go of the culprit. If Sarutobi Ryo did not appear for a day, she would continue to kill. I don't believe he won't appear. Chapter 37. Minato Namikaze, who wants to make merit the 4 Sand Village, Umbu quickly left, preparing to return to the frontline base. Pakura stayed alone in the Land of Fire, even more unscrupulous. Not long after, in Konoha, Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki were ready to go. Standing at the entrance of Konoha, Minato Namikaze pondered. Before, Ryuma Aburame reminded the 3rd Kazekage, but he still disappeared. That is to say, the 3rd Kazekage was still poisoned by Sasori. The Third Ninja World War also arrived as scheduled. According to the development of the situation, it should slowly become intense and raging. Then, the major countries suddenly realized that they were deeply mired in the mud, but could not get out. Then, the Third Ninja World War became the most tragic war in history. This was a war with no winner. The Konoha building was about to collapse, and it was precarious. He turned the tide and eventually became the fourth Hokage. It should have been like this. The current situation, however, because of the survival of Konoha White Fang and the abnormality of young Master Sarutobi Ryo, has caused the established future to deviate greatly. But the opportunity finally appeared. That Pakura, who had learned the swift-release bloodline limit, was someone that the people of Konoha could not handle. So they specifically sent himself and Kushina to subdue her. Pakura has learned swift release. This was another anomaly. In the established future, Pakura should only know scorch release. The development of the world became more and more confusing. Minato Namikaze could not help but hesitate. Perhaps young Master Sarutobi Ryo was not the culprit who caused everything. After all, no matter what, Pakura learning swift release had nothing to do with him. So what was the reason, or who was it that caused this world to start to go wrong? But no matter what, the position of fourth Hokage was something he was determined to get, because only in this way could he marry Kushina and eventually let his child Naruto be born into this world. 86, Section 86, Minato, what are you thinking about? Kushina, looking heroic and gallant in her Jonin uniform, came over and asked. It's nothing. Minato Namikaze smiled. Just looking at Kushina seemed to give him endless power. As long as she was by his side, he felt he could accomplish anything. He must become the fourth Hokage, and then change the fate of death. Obito, you're late again. Kakashi, who was waiting impatiently, looked at Obito, who came running with a look of disdain. Today I was helping an old lady across the road. Liar. Kakashi interrupted Obito, who was out of breath. All right, Kakashi, just let Obito off the hook. Rin Noera said with a smile. Then everyone, let's go. Eastern Fire Country, Port Town. An uninvited guest quietly arrived. In just half a day, the place was turned upside down. Boss lady, it's bad. That crazy woman is at it again. A lackey outside ran into the manor and shouted loudly at Girin, who was training. Looking at their bruised and swollen faces, it was clear they had been taught a lesson. And that was the light of it. Before, many brothers had their arms or legs broken. Even if they all rushed at her, they were no match for her. Boss lady, has there been any news from the boss? A lackey asked. A trace of embarrassment flashed across Girin's face. With the establishment of the transportation company, Ryo Sarutobi's branch offices had sprung up in the inland areas of the Fire Country. Some things were therefore very easy to know. For example, the things Pakura of the Scorch release have been doing everywhere for the past week. Lord is currently in secluded training. Girin made an excuse and said. Just then, another commotion rang out outside. Soon, several lackeys were thrown in. Yua! They screamed and rolled into a ball, looking extremely disheveled. Then a long-legged beauty walked in. Her proud figure was just an accessory. The beautiful and fierce face looking down from above was the real deal. You're that lackey of Ryo, Sarutobi. After searching around, Pakura had followed the clues to the headquarters of Ryo Sarutobi's industry. She sized up the kid in front of her. No matter how she looked at it, he was just a child. Your Excellency is no match for my lord. So you come to bully ordinary people like us? Girin had been in the ninja world for a long time, so her words were naturally very sharp. She directly labeled Pakura as bullying the weak. Huh, a sharp-tongued brat. You speak well, but it's useless. I'm here today to find Ryo Sarutobi. If he doesn't show up, I'll burn his industry to the ground. As she spoke, a flame ignited in Pakura's right palm. This ability made the surrounding lackeys retreat in fear, their faces filled with horror. Girin also felt some fear in her heart. After all, the other party was the legendary ninja, Pakura of the Scorch release, but thinking that she was the leader here and was entrusted with management by the Lord. So, she immediately became tough. Old woman, get past me first. No way, boss lady. The lackeys next to her quickly shouted. Don't you want your life? Who is this woman? We can't possibly be her match. Forget it. I'll play with this brat first. Pakura waved her hand, like flicking away a ball of flame. The fireball floated lightly towards Girin. At this point, Girin no longer hid her strength. She immediately formed hand seals with both hands and used the fire release technique. Fire release. Great flame technique. Scorching flames spewed out from the girl's mouth. The Sarutobi clan's technique, taught by Ryo Sarutobi, was learned by Girin. Boom! A trace of surprise flashed in Pakura's eyes. Even her own move was completely swallowed by the Great Flame technique. It hit. This woman was careless, Girin said happily. The other lackeys also stared blankly at the scene, completely unable to believe that their boss lady had instantly killed the legendary Scorch release Pakura in one exchange. However, the cold snort from the figure appearing in the flames in the next second made Girin feel as if she had fallen into an ice cave, only to see that after the Great Flame technique dissipated, Pakura stood unharmed on the spot, not affected by the fire release ninjutsu at all. How is this possible? Girin's expression changed drastically. Pakura's eyes became even more ruthless. What a vicious brat, trying to take someone's life right from the start. Then I'll just take your life first. Boom! Pakura raised her hand and condensed a fireball. Scorching white surged in the fireball. Girin subconsciously felt a sense of foreboding. This time, it was no longer ordinary fire release, but the Scorch release Kekkai Genkai Vapor Detonation Murder. Go! Pakura flicked her hand, and the fireball shot out, seeing that Girin was about to become a dried-up loli. However, in the next moment, a watercolored afterimage flew over at an incredible speed, directly dispersing the Scorch release fireball. Ooh! Pakura suddenly turned her head to look. In the next moment, her eyes widened. Ryo Sarutobi, you finally appeared. Chapter 38. Ryo Sarutobi versus Pakura. Buzz. The cold light of the sword blade directly pierced more than half of the wall. Lord! Seeing Ryo Sarutobi appear at the door, Girin was both surprised and delighted. Everyone also looked over together. The overwhelming killing intent, although aimed at Pakura, immediately made the ordinary thugs tremble. Even their consciousness and breathing began to blur. I just got back. Ryo Sarutobi retracted his killing intent, and everyone felt relieved. What? I heard you were looking for me. Pakura turned around and sized up Ryo Sarutobi leisurely, naturally unaffected by the killing intent at all. After confirming that it was not an imposter, but the real person, she nodded. You bullied my disciple, so I naturally have to seek justice for her. Pakura said that when her most beloved disciple was in trouble, the master naturally couldn't pretend not to see it. Then let's fight. After saying this, Ryo Sarutobi suddenly turned around and punched behind him. Without anyone knowing, several Sand Village Umbu appeared here. It turned out that they were worried that Pakura would be in danger, so they secretly returned. In the hearts of all Sand Village ninjas, Pakura was the most worthy of respect. Or rather, after the third Kazekage disappeared, everyone felt that Lord Pakura would be the next Kazekage, and not Raza. In the eyes of the four Sand Village Umbu, Ryo Sarutobi's punching speed was so fast that they could hardly react. Being able to follow Pakura meant that all four of them were elite experts. However, at this moment, under Ryo Sarutobi's hands, they couldn't even withstand a single move. After learning the fourth Kekkai Genkai, Ryo Sarutobi's physical fitness exploded, directly leaping to an extremely exaggerated level. Except for those real powerhouses, geniuses, and Jinchuriki, everyone else facing Ryo Sarutobi was no different from delivering food. The violent power, coupled with the awe-inspiring momentum. The other party only had time to punch as well, and collided with Ryo Sarutobi's fist. Bang! A loud noise. The Sand Village Umbu only felt himself take off instantly, losing control of his body. Boom, 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 boom. He flew out continuously, smashing through several walls and collapsing a warehouse. All kinds of wood, dust, and gravel scattered everywhere. With just one punch, a Jonin lost his fighting ability. The sand village Umbu, lying in the ruins, coughed up blood repeatedly. He wanted to get up, but he couldn't get up no matter what, although he wouldn't die for a while. Even an ordinary person could easily kill him in this situation. Everyone around looked at this scene, each one stunned. 87. Section 87 Fall Back. Yakura's angry roar echoed. Yakura raised her fair arm, and two scorching fireballs formed at her palm. Boom! The dancing fireballs scorched the air. The temperature inside the hall rose sharply. Seeing this, Giran immediately called on his underlings to run, because this place was likely to turn into an extremely terrifying battlefield. Yakura, in her extreme anger, was like an erupting volcano. Loving the village and her comrades, she would not allow anyone to harm her people. This protectiveness was also an important reason why Yakura earned the respect of her comrades. Yakura controlled the two fireballs, sending them flying towards Sarutobi Akira. Sarutobi Akira naturally had no intention of being roasted into a human jerky and quickly dodged to the side. Seeing this, the three Sand Village Umbu also immediately rushed into the ruins outside to save their comrades. Boom boom. Sure enough, Yakura raised her hands high above her head. Countless flames began to gather above her. Immediately, the wind stirred and the clouds surged. The entire hall began to flicker erratically. With a diameter of over 1 meter, such a huge fireball would obviously unleash an indiscriminate explosive attack when it exploded. This was a scorching technique that only Yakura could perform. Sarutobi Akira felt as if he had entered the sun-baked heat of midsummer. His mouth was dry, and he even felt dizzy. Sarutobi Akira immediately realized that Yakura's move not only gathered flames, but also drew away the surrounding air. When this move exploded, its power would be doubled as a result. And this move, just like Yakura's commoner background, had a simple and unadorned name. Scorching Release. Giant Fireball. This one move alone set Yakura apart from other strong contemporaries, such as Minato Namikaze and others. Because the giant fireball was an indiscriminate, wide-range explosion. At close range, all matter would be reduced to ashes. The violent explosion would shatter everything. At the same time, it also came with the added damage of wind releases cutting and fire releases scorching. In other words, even if one dodged the damage at the center of the explosion and the reduced damage nearby, as long as one was within the radius, one would still be injured. With this one move, Yakura could instantly reverse the situation and slaughter a group of enemies. Ice Release. Sarutobi Akira didn't even think. He immediately formed hand seals and activated Ice Release. Boom! A sun rose from the ground. Compared to Inoki's sun, the destructive power of Yakura's move was on a different level. The entire hall was directly reduced to ashes, razed to the ground in the explosion. The intense white light made everyone unable to open their eyes. When the explosion ended, the area around Yakura had been completely cleared, turning into a circle that looked like a meteor crater. Yakura, standing at the center, was unharmed. This had nothing to do with chakra control. The giant fireball, just now, had even engulfed Yakura herself. But the scorching release Kekii Genkai allowed Yakura to absorb/resist heat and absorb/resist wind. This was the secret to Yakura's fearlessness of Giran's fire release. It was also the reason why she dared to show her face and live in a land of wind for many years. Yet her skin remained firm, fair, and smooth. The scorching release Kekii Genkai had completely changed Yakura's DNA structure. From the dissipating smoke and dust, a figure suddenly rushed out. Sarutobi Akira, whose body was cut by countless wind attribute chakra and burned by fire attribute chakra, looked battered, but his eyes were bright and piercing. With the unmarked instantaneous body technique, an explosion of speed brought him directly in front of Yakura. Yakura's offensive just now made one thing clear. Absolutely. He could not create distance between them. Otherwise, she would repeat the move from just now. Hef foolish. However, engaging Yakura in close combat was equally unwise. Yakura, wave her hands. A series of fireballs rose from her hands, looking like a string of pearls. Each of these mini fireballs could be manipulated by Yakura. Their flight paths were unpredictable. In addition to their large number, they could attack from multiple angles. Anyone hit by this move would rapidly dehydrate within 3 to 5 seconds, eventually being baked dry and evaporated into a dried corpse by the high temperature. Chapter 39. New Fire Will Weapon. Yakura, suddenly seeing so many fireballs appearing. There was no trace of panic on Sarutobi Akira's face. Bang! He stepped on the ground with one foot. At the moment of stomping, the newly acquired magnet release, Kekkei Genkai, activated. Magnet release. The entire earth suddenly rumbled. It seemed that a slight earthquake had occurred. Yakura captured this subtle change, but she didn't understand it, because it was borrowing the power of the Earth's magnetic poles. So this move, Sarutobi Akira named it magnetic field rotation. This was originally a technique that only magnet release ninjas could possibly comprehend. After Sarutobi Akira successfully fused Earth plus wind, it was the first method of force exertion that came to mind. This method, combined with body technique exertion skills, would unleash unparalleled power and was a very suitable means for his own offensive and defensive system. And considering physical fitness, it was a technique that only he dared to use. At this moment, the earth shook, because the magnetic field power inside the ground had been borrowed by Sarutobi Akira. This power suddenly passed through the soles of his feet, transmitted to Sarutobi Akira's legs, and then into his body. This borrowed power was equivalent to a free positive buff. Terrifying power erupted in an instant. Sarutobi Akira struck out with a palm technique so fierce that it was unleashed. Crushing palm, an airbending body technique strike. It was no less than the power exerted by Jirobo entering the cursed seal state and erupting with cursed seal sage chakra. There was only a booming sound, as if a tank was firing a cannon. In an instant, it caused a vacuum effect. This palm actually directly compressed the air into a vacuum state. With this palm, the fireballs thrown out by Yakura exploded one after another, annihilated in midair. The person was even oppressed to the point of being unable to breathe or even unable to open their eyes. Sensing the danger, Yakura's figure suddenly darted out a distance. It was as if lightning was projected, without even causing the slightest disturbance. What kind of technique is this? Even if Yakura was knowledgeable, she would not recognize that this was a technique that Orochimaru obtained from the land of rice fields and then gave to himself. If it was a wind release technique, Yakura's scorching release could instantly devour it, increase its power, and engulf the enemy in one fell swoop. However, Sarutobi Akira's move just now was a pure body technique to the extreme. It was just borrowing the power, shaking the palms, and then performing body techniques. This palm strike was just pure air compression. The scorching release fireball, which could not be burned with wind release chakra, was naturally blown out directly by the strong wind. And just then, the sound of clanging hand-to-hand combat rang out outside. Sarutobi Akira looked back and saw that Yamanaka Kei had arrived with people. "Young master, be careful. Yakura has learned swift release." His timely arrival also brought the information that Yakura knew swift release. Swift release? Sarutobi Akira looked at Yakura again, and a strange look could not help but appear in his eyes. 88. Section 88 in the original work, Pakura only knows Scorch Release. It's worth mentioning that the character Pakura initially appeared in the movie Naruto Shippuden, the movie, The Will of Fire Inheritors. Later, Kishimoto made her an official character, turning her into a manga character. However, in the movie animation, Pakura's Kekkei Genkai is Swift Release. In the manga world, it became Scorch Release. Oh, I see. A thought flashed through his mind, thinking of the magnet release scroll hidden in Pakura's house, the one he stole. So, Pakura referred to the magnet release of the first two Kazekage and figured out Swift Release on her own. Interesting. While Sarutobi Ryo was thinking, A system prompt popped up on his retina. Will of Fire System, new Will of Fire Weapon. Pakura's side, mission objective. Inject the Will of Fire into Pakura. Side mission, reward 1. Swift release possibility. 20% progress required at this moment. Pakura felt that Sarutobi Ryo in front of her was different. Before she could continue speaking, Sarutobi Ryo acted again. With a hand seal-less body flicker technique, Sarutobi Ryo instantly moved in front of Pakura. However, Sarutobi Ryo was fast, but Pakura was even faster. Pakura, who possessed the swift release Kekkei Genkai, suddenly flashed to the side. Before Sarutobi Ryo could react, Pakura kicked out, hitting Sarutobi Ryo's side abdomen. Bang! Sarutobi Ryo took a few steps back, looking at Pakura with some surprise. The other party's figure was as fast as a ghost just now, and it didn't make any sound. Through several exchanges, Sarutobi Ryo began to figure out the characteristics of the swift release Kekkei Genkai. As everyone knows, the function of swift release Kekkei Genkai is to increase the user's speed. Now it seems that swift release can eliminate the sound of the wind, that is, air resistance. This Kekkei Genkai can repel or absorb wind. In short, it is some magical function to invalidate the obstruction of airflow to the human body's high-speed movement. This allows Pakura to have high-speed movement ability while being silent. This makes her move like a ghost. Interesting, Sarutobi Ryo said lightly, his heart becoming even hotter. If he could obtain this Kekkei Genkai, he could make his speed faster. He could even surpass Minato Namikaze's body flicker technique, second only to A's lightning release chakra mode. At that time, Minato Namikaze's advantage would only be the flying thunder god technique. That's right, Minato Namikaze's body flicker technique is also very fast. Even faster than the second Hokage, Tobirama Senju, and many ninjas have a misunderstanding, thinking that body flicker technique and Flying Thunder God technique are the same technique. Actually, they are not. Flying Thunder God is S rank, and ninjas in every ninja village know the body flicker technique, and the level is not high. According to the official data book Book of Confrontation, it is only D rank. Even Genin can learn this ninjutsu. For example, Gaara-san body flicker, Kakashi's leaf body flicker, ordinary body flicker, Mist Ninja's water body flicker, A's lightning body flicker, etc. Minato Namikaze's body flicker technique is an ordinary body flicker, but it is very fast, and once he learns swift release, he can surpass Minato Namikaze's body flicker technique. Pakura, I want you to become my will of fire weapon. Sarutobi Ryo, whose eyes were filled with scorching light, missed a hit and stepped forward again. Seeing that she had the advantage, Pakura steadied her mind and activated swift release again. Her whole person dashed in front of Sarutobi Ryo like a ghost. Chi. The kunai was attached with wind release chakra, possessing the characteristic of cutting through everything. The kunai slashed on Sarutobi Ryo's arm, and even with steel release Kekkei Genkai, Sarutobi Ryo's arm was still cut open. Chapter 40. Sarutobi Ryo's first appearance of madness after a series of fights. Sarutobi Ryo already had several cuts on his body. Pakura held a kunai with a mocking expression on her face. First, give this guy some pain, and then take his life. Just as Pakura was thinking this, the fight outside changed. Screams sounded. This made her realize that something was wrong. With the cooperation of Yamanaka Kei, Hyuga, and the Yumino couple, they quickly overwhelmed the three hidden Sandumbu. Especially since they also had an injured person, they were even more powerless to resist. Damn it, Pakura changed her offensive, directly giving up the idea of torturing Sarutobi Ryo, intending to kill Sarutobi Ryo directly and then relieve her companions. Where are you looking? At the moment she glanced away, Sarutobi Ryo also changed. A large rock appeared above Sarutobi Ryo's head. Bang! Stepping on the ground, he used magnet release magnetic field rotation, borrowing the power of the earth. It was transmitted to his arm. Then he used taijutsu to exert force and throw the rock out. This time, the big rock flew out as if a giant cannonball had been thrown. The sharp whistling sound in the air faintly cut through the air. Obviously, it created a supersonic momentum. Pakura's pupils shrank, and she had to duck to avoid it. She heard a loud bang, and a small pit was smashed into the ground behind her. Too slow, seeing the rock flying out in a supersonic state, Sarutobi Ryo was still dissatisfied. Because with Pakura's strength, or rather his own strength, this level of powerhouse can dodge the attack of a supersonic flying tool. Pakura has swift release, so as long as she is careful, it will be easier to hide. So, Sarutobi Ryo grabbed a handful of pebbles from the ground. These stones had sharp shapes. Bang! Sarutobi Ryo stepped forward, gathered strength, and swung his right arm violently. Boom! The pebbles pierced the air, faintly bringing up sparks. That was a special effect produced by the high heat friction of the air. With one throw, he actually broke the sound barrier again, producing a higher throwing speed. Looking at the supersonic barrage scattered like buckshot in front of her, even Pakura would die on the spot if she was not careful. Damn it! Pakura's face changed drastically, and she never thought that the other party's methods would be so tricky. This guy, she dodged left and right, tried her best to avoid it. Even so, several bloodstains were scratched on her body. Sarutobi Ryo relied on the dynamic vision of his right eye to calibrate, and could easily lock onto Pakura's general position. He threw it many times in a row. Pakura thought, doesn't this guy have endless stamina? She didn't know that the great power of Sarutobi Ryo's throws each time was borrowed from the power of the earth, which could be said to be completely free. After dodging many times, Pakura also saw the trick. This guy steps on the ground every time before attacking. Could it be some kind of earth release ninjutsu? Pakura is not a sensory ninja, so she can only judge based on experience. But no matter how she imagined it, she couldn't imagine that Sarutobi Ryo could learn magnet release. The next moment, Sarutobi Ryo burst out with all his strength. The speed of the stones all over the sky exceeded 400 meters per second, even reaching a rapid 430 meters per second. Pakura exclaimed, and several blood flowers burst out on her body. Although she raised her arms to block, a deep wound was still scratched on her thigh. Damn it! Pakura was about to activate swift release, but she limped under her feet. The speed suddenly slowed down. The weakness of swift release was revealed here. So it still depends on the legs. I thought the legs were just decorations for swift release. Sarutobi Ryo's murmur sounded, and Pakura suddenly widened her eyes. Because Sarutobi Ryo had already arrived behind Pakura at this moment. 89. Section 89. Before Yeatsong could turn her head, Sarutobi Ryo suddenly attacked. His hand blade struck the back of her neck directly. The power that could shatter the bones of an ox would only cause a master like Yeatsong to faint. And so, bang! Yeatsong fell face first to the ground, immediately losing consciousness. It's unknown how much time had passed. Yeatsong slowly woke up. The surroundings were unusually quiet, with only the sound of the wind flowing. Faint hammering sounds came from somewhere, the source unknown. You're awake? The dim underground was unaffected by Yeatsong's powerful technique. The hall above was destroyed and a warehouse was gone, but the other buildings were still in good condition. After all, this manor was quite large. If the living room was gone, they could just rebuild it. The sound Yeatsong heard was from the craftsman rebuilding. 3 of your 4 companions are dead, and 1 is seriously injured. Sarutobi Ryo informed Yeatsong of the outcome. If you don't want him to die, cooperate with me obediently. Wishful thinking. Yeatsong glared at Sarutobi Ryo with hatred. I'm not a 3-year-old child. Do you think I'll listen to such a simple threat? Note that your Sand Village started this. Sarutobi Ryo corrected. Although the Sand Village wasn't the initial cause of the Third Shinobi World War, the disappearance of the third Kazekage was indeed the last straw that broke the camel's back. As a ninja, you must obey the village's orders. Don't you even understand this principle? Bound to a chair, Yeatsong held her head high, which made her impressive figure even more noticeable. Sarutobi Ryo, you laugh at me for not understanding the rules. I laugh at your blind loyalty. In the original story, Yi Tsong was betrayed by Raza and became a tool to appease the elders in the Mist Village. What are you laughing at? Yi Tsong retorted fiercely. I'm laughing at you for being too young. Sarutobi Ryo shook his head. He glanced at the 0% injection progress displayed by the system before him. Then next, as long as it reaches 20%, he can obtain swift release. Let's begin. Don't rush to get swift release. First, pry out some useful information. However, at this moment, she discovered that her whole body was weak, and she couldn't even gather chakra. Why? Damn it, could it be? The figure of the Byakugan-wielding girl, Hyugururi, flashed before her eyes. After a moment's thought, Yi Tsong understood that after she fainted, she had been hit with gentle fist, and her chakra points had been sealed. Only the Hyuga's Byakugan, Kekiai, Jinkai, Gentle Fist Taijutsu could so easily disable a person in such a short time. Stop. Yi Tsong's screams echoed through the underground. Chapter 41. Minato Namikaze. You're late. Even Yi Tsong, once captured, was helpless against the Yamanaka clan's secret search techniques. Just like Kisame in the original story, who had information extracted from his brain by Yamashiro Aoba. Yamashiro Aoba believed that his skill in searching memories was far inferior to Yamanaka Inoichi, yet he was still able to dig up information from Kisame's head. And at this moment, Yi Tsong had no chance to erupt with chakra again to resist. After all, her chakra points had been sealed by Ruri with Gentle Fist. Therefore, she could only let Yamanaka-ke do as she pleased. As the scenery of Yamanaka-ke's memory reading flowed, soon, some very important information appeared in Yamanaka-ke's mind's eye. Seeing the surprised expression on Yamanaka-ke's face, Sarutobi Ryo immediately realized there was an important secret. K. What did you discover, young master? Things may be more troublesome than we thought. That old guy, the third Kazekage, is still alive. Sarutobi Ryo. Exclamation point. Yi Tsong ugh. Ginger is still best when it's old. After being reminded twice, first by Minato Namikaze and then by Sarutobi Ryo, how could the third Kazekage, as the strongest Kazekage, not guard against Sasori? Sasori did indeed use poison, but the only thing that died was a shadow clone. The real third Kazekage, taking advantage of Sasori's actions, faked his disappearance in order to eliminate the internal parasites of the Sand Village. Impressive, as expected of a strong person from a place like the Sand Village. Sarutobi Ryo couldn't help but sigh. The harsh environment of the impoverished land of wind creates enduring and resilient, strong individuals. The teachings of the successive Kazekages were self-control and patience. Now, the third Kazekage, in order to completely eliminate the Sand Village's elder council stirs, chose to fake his death. And the Sand Village, thrown into chaos, after confirming that the third Kazekage was really missing, the elder council would reveal their true nature, and it would escalate. When their crimes are confirmed and they're jumping around like clowns, the third Kazekage will reappear. He will thoroughly eliminate the black sheep with thunderous force. And at that time, Yi Tsong will become the new Kazekage. This information is explosive. No one would have thought that the third Kazekage was not dead. Moreover, he was planning to clean up the Sand Village again, so that the Sand Village will become even stronger after its transformation. This courage, this plan, young master, should we report this matter to Lord Hokage and the others? Yamanaka-ke asked. Should they inform the Konoha high-ups about this matter? Not yet. Sarutobi Ryo shook his head, rejecting Yamanaka-ke's suggestion. This matter needs to be carefully considered. The sky changed color, and the sun began to set. Minato Namikaze and Kushina, with Team 7, arrived at Sarutobi Ryo's manor. Yi Tsong had committed multiple crimes and left relatively clear traces. Coupled with Yamanaka-ke and the others acting first, Minato Namikaze followed the clues and finally found this place. The port town had become slightly deserted due to the arrival of the war. However, the transport of supplies at the port was even more hurried. This is easy to understand. The more there is war, the more frequent the various transports of supplies become. I heard that young Master Ryo owns a property here. It seems that the docks here are under young Master Ryo's jurisdiction. Kakashi said indifferently, with his arms crossed. He often heard his father chatting with young Master Ryo at home, and he had learned a lot of useful information. Minato Namikaze nodded, knowing more inside information than Kakashi. The upper echelons all knew that young Master Ryo ran a port business. This was not surprising. After all, the Nara clan also had a large forest within the borders of the Land of Fire. It was not uncommon for the tentacles of various major clans to penetrate the Land of Fire. Soon, Minato Namikaze and Kushina arrived at the entrance of the manor before sunset. After stating their identities, the group entered. As soon as they entered, they discovered traces of a fight. Even though the sun was setting, the craftsmen were still repairing the destroyed hall. It was estimated that they would only stop when it was completely dark. This manor is really big. Obito was shocked by the size of the manor, feeling that it was like a resort. Young Master Ryo, Noara Rin couldn't help but think of young Master Ryo, who was handsome and rich. Outside of Konoha, he not only owned businesses but also such a manor. If they came here on a mission, they could have a good rest. She had been missing young Master Ryo for many days. Fighting. Could it be that the members of Umbu Squad 6 have already fought with Yitsong? Minato Namikaze murmured, looking at the traces of the fight. The faces of Yamanaka K and the others flashed through his mind. For the past week, young Master Ryo's whereabouts had been unpredictable, while Yitsong had been causing trouble everywhere, so the higher-ups finally sent him. 90. Section 90, just as Minato Namikaze was about to take another step forward. On the other side, Sarutobi appeared on the scene with Ruri and the others. Minato, you've arrived. The two sides met, and Minato Namikaze was somewhat surprised to see Sarutobi appear. Young Master Ri. Now that young Master Ri has appeared, does that mean he has personally fought Ikura? Yes, Ikura did come here before. Sarutobi nodded. We gathered all our strength to barely defeat her, but unfortunately, just when we thought we had captured her, we didn't expect to only catch a shadow clone. Sarutobi's statement made Minato Namikaze slightly stunned, because he couldn't judge whether this matter was true or false. That shadow clone just said a bunch of nasty things to us. Is that so? Minato Namikaze hesitated. As you can see, this place has been severely damaged. Sarutobi pointed to the hall that was being rebuilt. If you don't mind, I'll find you a hotel to stay in. Under Sarutobi's persuasion, Minato Namikaze and the others had no choice but to leave the manor and go to a local hotel. After settling Minato Namikaze and the others and chatting for a few words, Sarutobi prepared to leave. Minato Namikaze watched Sarutobi's shadow disappear into the darkness, his mind repeatedly thinking. Minato, I always feel like this guy's lying to us, Kushina hummed. Probably not. Minato Namikaze smiled, turned around, and walked back to the hotel. No matter what the real situation is, as long as young Master Ri hasn't truly defeated Ikura or captured her, then his reputation will not continue to rise. The rest shouldn't be a problem. Chapter 42. Injecting the will of fire into Ikura. Back at the manor, the craftsmen had already left. The sky was completely dark. In another hall, Sarutobi faced the members of the transportation company, listening to their recent reports. Lord, I want to home myself. Kurenai knelt on one knee, realizing her shortcomings. Faced with Ikura's crushing defeat, she finally realized the importance of strength. Even that white-haired kid, Kakashi, who was just next to Minato Namikaze, was not to be underestimated. Kurenai, who had been aroused by a competitive spirit, felt that this place could no longer allow her skills to improve further. The industry here will also be gradually transferred and managed by other managers. When the war starts, this port will be attacked by Kirigakure sooner or later, so Sarutobi is determined to shift the focus to the Land of Waves. After arranging everything, in the hall, only Yamanaka K, Haigururi, and the Yumino couple remained as companions. Sarutobi glanced at them. The Yumino couple were very puzzled as to why young Master Ri didn't tell the truth. Or was Ikura, who was captured, really just a shadow clone? Because Ikura had been famous for too long and was a well-known powerhouse in Sunagakure, the two of them really didn't dare to be sure whether young Master Ri had caught the main body. It's normal to have this kind of doubt. After all, Ikura's reputation was too loud. Young Master Ri defeated Ikura so easily. How could it not be shocking? The reason why Sarutobi didn't prepare to tell the others the truth was because he had his own considerations. In addition to injecting the will of fire into Ikura to obtain swift release and scorching release Kekiai Genkai, a bold plan was also rising in Sarutobi's heart. This is not only related to Konoha's victory in the Third Ninja World War, but also to the future of the ninja world. I will try again to obtain some information from Ikura's shadow clone, because the shadow clone may disappear at any time. Sarutobi got up and left his seat. The Yumino couple looked at each other, the doubts in their eyes slightly receding. As expected, he didn't catch the main body. It's really a pity. Let's go, Ruri. I'll take you out for a stroll. Yamanaka Kei, on the other hand, took Ruri out of the manor, preparing to have some fun at the night market. With the war breaking out, there won't be many such leisurely times in the future. In the dark underground, candlelight flickered. When Ikura regained consciousness, she had become extremely weak. The secret technique of the Yamanaka clan failed to destroy her brain. The tenacious Sunagakure hero still held on, but this also made her exhausted, with almost no strength left. You! Ikura glared fiercely at the young man in front of her. With the intelligence in her mind being plundered, Ikura couldn't wait to commit suicide on the spot to apologize. After all, because of her momentary carelessness, the Kazekage's plan was leaked, which was really, I'm quite interested in your plan. Sarutobi stood in front of Ikura with his hands behind his back and began to slowly pace back and forth. His opening words made Ikura slightly stunned. We in Konoha already have 3 elders who are troublesome enough, but your Sunagakure has more than a dozen old guys. You must have a headache every day. Sarutobi's gentle words made Ikura a little confused. What do you want to do? The third Kazekage strategy is to eliminate the parasites of Sunagakure. The plan is pretty good. Sarutobi continued. But there will be many obstacles in this process. Even Raza will become a stumbling block on your path. Sarutobi's words made Ikura's expression slowly become serious. How much does this guy know about our Sunagakure? Damn! Could it be that the Yamanaka woman dug out all the information in her mind? No, that's not right. To completely excavate a person's brain, even Yamanaka and Noichi would need several days. And Ikura confirmed that she was only tossed around for a little while. Raza is indeed the Kazekage's disciple, but his interests are on the side of the elders. Of course, if he knew that the third Kazekage was still alive, he wouldn't have the courage to continue to compromise with the elders. In the original work, Raza constantly compromised with the elder group, eventually killing Ikura. Later, when Gaara became Kazekage, it was almost the same, because the elders were really difficult to deal with. Ikura in the original work was blindly loyal, because she did not expect the shamelessness of the elders. But in this world, thanks to the influence of the third Kazekage, Ikura has begun to realize the shortcomings of Sunagakure. From the result, it can be seen. If Raza becomes Kazekage, Sunagakure will gradually decline and eventually even have to rely on Raza's magnet release to subsidize the mining and selling of money to maintain the economy. But if Ikura becomes Kazekage, Sunagakure will become even stronger. From Konoha's standpoint, a weakened Sunagakure is obviously more in line with Konoha's interests, but that is just short-sighted. In the long run, considering the Akatsuki, Infinite Tsukiyami, Uchiha Madara, Tsutsuki aliens, and so on, a strong Sunagakure can provide enough help. In the original work, Naruto and Gaara's relationship was indeed better. The two sides helped each other and achieved a win-win situation. Sarutobi is currently planning to realize this step in advance, laying the groundwork for the future. Ikura, I have a proposal. Sarutobi's eyes were burning, staring at the Sunagakure One-E-san who was tied to the chair in front of him. Her fair skin, illuminated by the candlelight, was reflected in Sarutobi's eyes. She was clearly from the land of wind, but she had not been eroded by the wind and sand at all. The few small wounds on her body added to her battle-worn, heroic charm. Her proud figure, set off by her backless outfit, showed Ikura's absolute confidence. "You help me. I help you. What do you think?" WH-. Before Ikura could react. In the darkness, the Sarutobi clan's summoning weapon rose slowly, like the rising sun. Dazzling and shocking. The system's prompt requires 20% progress to obtain swift release. So, let's eat something first. Don't be polite, I'll feed you. Sarutobi stared at the surprised face of the One-San, her red lips clearly visible. The next moment he stepped forward. Pa-ta! The delicious food was placed on Ikura's smooth and fair nose. Ikura, with wide eyes, looked at the special delicacies of the land of fire in disbelief. Her eyes widened. There was no way, because this was really too. The next second, Ikura, ugh. The night grew darker. The rhythm of the night, the will of fire meal, is entertaining the guest from Sunagakure. 91. Section 91. Sarutobi Ryo's lips curled up as he continued to feed her. Pakura, eat up Pakura, Ugbleg. Chapter 43. Original flavored chicken. Pakura, eat up, progress, 5%. Progress, 6%. Watching the progress bar steadily rise, Sarutobi Ryo felt quite satisfied. A 20% progress was a result worth anticipating. 90% progress, however, was too far off. Even if he tormented Pakura to death, he probably wouldn't get that much progress in a short time. He and she were enemies, so gaining her approval wasn't that simple. Therefore, the system's prompt was very clear. First, obtain swift release and wait for further developments, slowly, bit by bit, to gain Pakura's approval, and then finally obtain scorch release. Snap! Sarutobi Ryo pinched Pakura's cheek, feeling its fair and smooth texture. Pakura, ugh. As the feeding speed increased, the progress also began to grow rapidly. Just like that, time seemed to pass for a long time. For Pakura, it might have felt like a lifetime. Sarutobi Ryo fed her a drink. A large amount of beverage was gulped down by Pakura. Sarutobi Ryo leaned forward deeply, striving not to let Pakura waste a single drop. Pakura, on the other hand, widened her eyes, struggling weakly, but obviously to no avail. After a long while Sarutobi Ryo finished feeding. Hospitality complete. Ugh, huff, Pakura gasped for breath, looking dazed. Some of the drink still stained the corners of Pakura's mouth, adding a touch of unique charm under the candlelight. The darkness in Sarutobi Ryo's heart flickered for a moment. A violent voice in his heart made Sarutobi Ryo feel an impulse. But quickly, Sarutobi Ryo suppressed his dark side. "I'm very interested in your swift release," Sarutobi Ryo said, looking at Pakura and the 19% progress prompt from the system. "Tonight, you can think about it carefully here, whether or not you want to tell me some tips on cultivating swift release, of course. You can also refuse," but Sarutobi Ryo sized up Pakura's body wantonly. The invasive gaze made Pakura's hair stand on end. "You understand the consequences." After speaking, Sarutobi Ryo turned and left the underground. The candlelight flickered, and Pakura's breathing gradually calmed down. Huff! The candlelight burned out, and everything returned to darkness. A faint sob rang out from the dark environment, echoing continuously the next morning. The clanging sound rang out again. What followed was Sarutobi Ryo's renewed hospitality towards the guest who had come from afar. In the dark underground, it happened again. And this time, the anger and hatred in Pakura's eyes had increased by several degrees. Ugh! Pakura glared fiercely at Sarutobi Ryo while eating. Sarutobi Ryo looked down condescendingly at the Sunagakure beauty with a face full of hatred, feeling extremely comfortable. "Chi! Ugh!" Pakura's eyes widened suddenly. The gurgling sound of swallowing continued to ring out, and after a long while the heavy breathing sounded again. This was the reaction of eating a lot of food in one breath. How was the Fire Country Sarutobi clan-style breakfast? Sarutobi Ryo stepped back and asked unhurriedly. Huff Pakura didn't speak. but her murderous gaze said it all. "Have you thought about my proposal from last night, Pakura?" Sarutobi Ryo asked. "If you don't agree, then I can only let the Sunagakure ninjas see the heroic figure they admire." A truly sad scene. Sarutobi Ryo's threat caused Pakura's expression to change several times. At the same time, the progress prompt also increased visibly. Progress 20%. Task reward. Swift release. Looking at the prompt that popped up in front of him, Sarutobi Ryo knew that Pakura had compromised. Very good. Sarutobi Ryo dragged a chair over and sat down, beginning a secret conversation with Pakura. Time slowly passed in this way. Sarutobi Ryo finally obtained the cultivation method for swift release. It is worth mentioning that Pakura had also only recently integrated swift release, so the usage of this Kekkai Genkai could not be considered perfect. This also indicated that if Sarutobi Ryo mastered it and continued to practice it, he would likely embark on a completely different branch path from Pakura, which was very reasonable. After obtaining the cultivation method he needed, Sarutobi Ryo also planned to release Pakura as agreed. "And my companion," Pakura said fiercely after being untied. She would never forget this humiliation. And the fact that the other party let her go was also the biggest mistake of his life. Being kind to the enemy is being cruel to yourself. Pakura decided that she would continue to practice hard and keep improving after returning. When her strength was strong enough, she would seek revenge on Sarutobi Ryo. "I have already sent someone to send your Umbu companion back." Sarutobi Ryo sent Pakura to the bottom of a hillside outside the manor with his hands behind his back. This place was densely covered with forests and shrubs, so it would not be discovered by others. The person who sent the other party away was naturally Kurinai. Sarutobi Ryo gave Kurinai a mission so that she could move freely and hone her skills. As a genius who could fuse the crystal release Kekkai Genkai, giving Kurinai enough freedom and practical training was the right path. "You better be telling the truth." Pakura continued to threaten fiercely. If she found out it was fake after returning, Sarutobi Ryo frowned, and the next moment, he stepped forward and grabbed Pakura's arm. "What are you doing?" Pakura was suddenly startled, feeling goosebumps all over her body. The experiences of last night and this morning were nightmares she couldn't shake off. Doing Sarutobi Ryo suddenly leaned close to Pakura's ear and said softly to her. The next second, the world spun before Pakura's eyes, and she had already been dragged to her knees by Sarutobi Ryo with a thud. Before she could react, Sarutobi Ryo began the farewell hospitality, and this time, with the use of the system function. The will of fire imprint also instantly appeared on Pakura's abdomen. What did you do? Cough, 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 Pakura asked, lying on the ground, constantly coughing and gagging. The burning sensation in her abdomen almost made her question her life. How long had it been since she had learned Scorch Release and felt this kind of burning? "It's nothing. I just put a cursed seal on you," as insurance Sarutobi Ryo said coldly, looking at the Sunagakure beauty lying on the ground. Hearing the words "cursed seal," Pakura's expression changed drastically in an instant. Among the ninja world, the most vicious technique was the cursed seal. Even Konoha, which had the most developed sealing techniques, did not have a good solution. She lay on the ground with a pale face, and by the time she reacted, Sarutobi Ryo had already left. Damn it, Pakura got up from the ground and quickly left the scene. 92. Section 92. In the forest air, a string of tears fell. Chapter 44. Swift Release. The fifth Kekkai Genkai is complete. Several days later, Yakura returned to Sunagakure. This trip ultimately ended with Yakura's complete return. From Sunagakure's perspective, Yakura had caused a great disturbance within the Land of Fire, even managing to escape from Tsukumo Hitaki. It was clearly an action that greatly boosted morale. Although they ultimately failed to kill the Hokage's son, it was considered sufficient. After all, passing through the flowers without a leaf clinging to the body already explained everything. From Konoha's perspective, Sarutobi returned and repelled Yakura, causing her to quickly abandon her activities within the Land of Fire. She didn't appear within the Land of Fire again for a while. This was undoubtedly a victory for Konoha and the name of the Black Reaper resounded once more. Both sides felt they had won. However, the Konoha elders were not stingy in taking the opportunity to publicize. Koharu Yuditane and Hamura Mikoto announced internally and externally that Yakura had fled in panic because she heard rumors of Minato Namake's actions. As for how many people would believe it, that was another matter. A week after Yakura left, Sarutobi's training also came to a temporary end. With the acquisition of the 5th Kekkai Genkai, Sarutobi's qualities were once again improved. First of all, the shadow clones. The number can already be maintained at more than 15 when training with all strength. This is equivalent to having 15 times the training speed. It also indicates the improvement of Sarutobi's total chakra, physical strength, and chakra control. The duration of the shadow clones has also become longer. Most importantly, it is the acquisition of swift release. Inside the manner that had been mostly repaired, Sarutobi took a step and already felt a clear difference. This step was as light as a swallow, as if his body had become lighter out of thin air. Another leap, and he felt as if he was floating in the air. Landing on his feet, Sarutobi quietly experienced this feeling. Swift release. In the next moment, his figure flashed, and he had already appeared on the wall. It doesn't require hand seals, but directly changes the physique, a Kekkai Genkai that exerts force from within. After a preliminary attempt, Sarutobi began to continue his training. When Yamanaka Saru walked over from the side yard, what he saw was a black shadow constantly moving. Under the daylight, this black shadow moved so fast that it almost formed afterimages. Moreover, there was no sound at all, just like a ghost. As Sarutobi's movement speed increased again, these black afterimages turned into a series of black lines. Yamanaka Satoru constantly shifted his gaze, unable to keep up. Soon he could no longer see the human form in front of him. It seems that young master has mastered swift release, but this speed is too amazing. This movement speed is already comparable to those who use body flicker technique, such as Minato Namake's and Tsukumo Hatake. Swish! Sarutobi stepped silently, revealing his figure. Amazing! Sarutobi couldn't help but exclaim at the effect of the swift release Kekkai Genkai. With just preliminary training, he had already approached Minato Namake's and others. After training for a while longer, surpassing Minato Namake's body flicker technique was entirely possible. At that time, the only ninjas who could compete with him in terms of movement would be Tsukumo Hatake and the 4th Reikage, EI. Of course, Minato Namake's is still young now. But even if he develops to the later stages in the original story, his body flicker technique will definitely not be as good as his own swift release, unless he becomes a perfect Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails. Therefore, the only thing Minato Namake's can rely on is the Flying Thunder God technique. In Sarutobi's mind, Tsukumo Hatake is the most suitable candidate for the 4th Hokage, and the 5th. Naturally, there will be competition between himself and Minato Namake's. Therefore, it is no problem to consider it in advance. Young master, congratulations. Yamanaka Satoru walked over and first congratulated his young master on mastering swift release. The higher-ups have just issued an order, saying that Iwagakure has already begun a large-scale offensive. Iwagakure has at least 15,000 ninjas. Noki certainly wouldn't invest all of them from the start. The initial stage of the Great Shinobi World War, turning into a symbol of intensification, is the increase in the number of people invested, from small-scale probing to core warfare. Therefore, the pressure on the Konoha front has increased sharply. Since Kumogakure is also constantly harassing, Kirigakure has also recently reoccupied Yuzushiogakure and has begun harassing the inland of the Land of Fire. Sunagakure is also constantly causing trouble. Konoha is facing multiple enemies at the same time. Under such circumstances, masters such as Tsukumo Hatake cannot be divided into countless clones. Therefore, mobilizing every Konoha ninja and making the best use of their talents is the strategy of the Konoha higher-ups. The arrangement Sarutobi received was to go to the Iwagakure front. The main battlefield will be held by the main force. Sarutobi's mission is to penetrate deep into the enemy camp and assassinate the enemy commander. Assassination. Sarutobi raised an eyebrow. The work of the Umbu is always closely related to darkness. Assassination is indeed commonplace. But to take the enemy's head from among the 10,000 troops is indeed a bit difficult. Fortunately, he has now mastered swift release, which is enough to be traceless and fearless of being besieged. Details will be explained on the road. Sarutobi immediately set off, leading his Umbu Squad 6 to Iwagakure. Sarutobi could smell a conspiracy in this mission. Could it be that the Konoha higher-ups were anxious after seeing him repel Yakura? This is possible. 2 days later, Sarutobi led the team to the northern part of the Land of Fire, facing the Iwagakure front. Konoha currently has 2 locations where it is fighting Iwagakure. One is connected through the Land of Rain. One is connected through the Land of Grass. The location where Sarutobi is currently located is where the Land of Fire and the Land of Grass meet. Iwagakure crossed the Land of Grass and launched an invasion into the Land of Fire. According to intelligence, they have a team of more than 1,000 people gathering on the Land of Grass side. Waiting for logistics to be in place, they will launch a large-scale offensive. The Land of Grass also has a ninja village called Kusagakure. Because of its weak strength, it lay flat and pretended to be dead from the beginning. Iwagakure was too lazy to pay attention to Kusagakure. After all, Kusagakure also had the fate of being harvested. The 5 major countries required Kusagakure to establish Zukage, Hozuki Castle, to imprison important criminals from various countries. Therefore, Kusagakure carried out large-scale construction for this reason and was extremely poor, and it was impossible to turn the sky upside down. The countries naturally ignored it, at most using it as a novice experience package to practice, and had no intention of destroying them. Chapter 45. Explosion Release plus Steel Release Hunting within the Land of Grass. Natural vegetation is dense. Huge mushrooms 4 or 5 meters high and trees over 50 meters high can be seen everywhere. Even the grass is often close to the height of one person. In such a dense natural environment, concealment and reconnaissance have become important offensive and defensive methods. A small team of Iwagakure ninjas is currently walking on a path in the forest. The leader has an exaggerated hairstyle, a gaunt face, and black eyes that take up most of the eye sockets, making him look like a skeleton demon. It's Bakutan no Keri, Explosion Release Hunting. Yamanaka Satoru recognized the other party's identity immediately. As a standard Iwagakure ninja, Keri developed step by step, experiencing birth, growth, entering the ninja school, graduating, and finally being promoted to an elite Iwagakure Jinin. Because of his powerful explosive ability, the explosion release, Kekkei Genkai, he was transferred to the explosion department by Noki, and eventually became the leader of this department, which will be Daidar's predecessor. Explosion Release is a Kekkei Genkai with very powerful attack power. It can instantly blow others into ashes. The 3 Jinin behind him should not be underestimated. They belong to various departments, reconnaissance team, logistics department, and well-known figures in the Umbu. Usually speaking, in some important tasks, Iwagakure will directly dispatch elites, and strong people will complete the task of scouting. For example, before this large-scale operation of Iwagakure, Keri and the other 4 were sent to clear the passage, investigate Konoha's movements, and strictly prevent Konoha from setting traps. Because of their extremely strong strength and extremely high authority, the 4 of them have wartime freedom of action and can decide their respective actions based on real-time situations. 93. Section 93. Suddenly, Keri stopped moving forward, tilting his head to the side. There were 5 powerful heartbeats. Ordinary people couldn't possibly hear them, and even ordinary Jonin would have difficulty noticing. However, Keri's strength was already completely comparable to Kakashi with the 3 Tomo Sharingan from the original work. Just like Kakashi hearing the numerous heartbeats in Sasuke's hospital room in the original Chunin exams, Carrie could also clearly hear the heartbeats of these uninvited guests. And from this, it could be seen that he was the strongest of the four. Immediately after, a barrage of flying tools came raining down. Since they had already been discovered, Sarutobi Ryo didn't plan to continue hiding. Thus, Sarutobi Ryo directly ordered Yamanaka and the others to attack. Chi chi chi. The flying tools were stuck all over the ground. The four were thus separated. The next second, Sarutobi Ryo's figure transformed into an afterimage, already using swift release to launch a lightning-fast offensive. Bang! Sarutobi Ryo was greeted by Carrie, raising his elbow. He only had time to raise his arm to defend. Generally speaking, even a Jonin wouldn't dare to directly confront Sarutobi Ryo's punch. So Carrie's defense could easily lead to a first encounter kill. However, when this resounding bang echoed, the situation changed. Only a burst of sound was heard, as if a bomb had exploded directly in the air. A visible shockwave spread from the point where Sarutobi Ryo's fist and Carrie's elbow connected. The enormous power spread through the air and finally shot out in all directions. Wherever it passed, the grass and trees swayed. Even many blades of grass flew into the air. After one punch, Sarutobi Ryo stumbled back a few steps. The knuckles of his punching right hand were already bruised and purple, and even his arm was trembling slightly. The opponent's arm, there's something wrong. When he punched just now, it didn't feel like hitting a human body, but rather like hitting a hard piece of steel. Black Death God, Sarutobi Ryo. Carrie slowly lowered his bluish-black arm and spoke indifferently. Looking at the bluish-black color covering the other party's skin, Sarutobi Ryo's right eye pupil contracted, and he quickly realized an impossible possibility. This is some kind of bloodline limit. Is it steel release? The skin was bluish-black, like a smooth piece of metal. And it's worth mentioning, in the movie, the steel release ninja that Hiriko absorbed was Carrie. But in the manga, Carrie possessed explosion release bloodline limit. This seemed a little interesting. Yakura's bloodline limit became swift release plus scorch release. Carrie's bloodline limit became steel release plus explosion release. Is this the change caused by my time travel? Sarutobi Ryo knew that when he came to this world, he would change many things. The flapping of butterfly wings would cause many things to become different. The battle broke out. Yamanaka and the others exchanged blows with the other three IWA ninjas. In the forest, Carrie took a stance, leisurely confronting Sarutobi Ryo. Along with the sound of metal friction, Carrie's entire body turned dark black. This showed that he had covered his entire body with steel release, allowing his entire body to enter this impenetrable defense. As the owner of Steel Release and the Steel Release from the movie, Carrie could use chakra to harden his skin and turn it into metal. In this state, his defense was stronger than C-rank Earth Release, hardening technique, and even stronger than Kakuzu's B-rank Earth Release, Earth Spear. In the original work, Kakuzu's Earth Release, Earth Spear could not only shatter barriers with one punch, but also withstand the physical attacks of the two-tailed beast with his bare hands. And Carrie's Steel Release bloodline limit would only be above Earth Release, Earth Spear. Bang! Only a loud noise was heard. The ground cracked, and the earth shook. Carrie stepped out, his whole person rushing over like a tank. His thin body, combined with the blue-black Steel Release bloodline limit, had a strange sense of power. Crushing palm, Sarutobi Ryo leaped back and slapped out a palm from a distance. An attack that could kill a bull was like a gentle breeze to Carrie. He directly ignored Sarutobi Ryo's attack, and his speed didn't slow down at all. Bang! With one palm strike, a large hole was created directly in the ancient tree. This palm was like a tank really crashed over. Carrie looked at Sarutobi Ryo, who had dodged with some surprise. Body flicker technique? Hand seal less body flicker technique? I heard that you were a disciple of Konoha White Fang. Now it seems that the rumors are true. Meeting a worthy opponent. Sarutobi Ryo looked at Carrie, who was invincible in both offense and defense. The other party hadn't even used explosion release yet, and he could cause such terrifying power. Sarutobi Ryo was not only not afraid, but his blood was boiling. That was the desire to challenge the strong. Chapter 4: Sarutobi Ryo and Slug Team Up. Sarutobi Ryo didn't say a word, staring intently at Carrie. The next moment, the two moved at the same time. Chi! Only a cold sword light flashed, along with Sarutobi Ryo's figure rushing forward. Kusunagi's sword with a cold light stabbed towards Carrie's eyes. This sword, accompanied by the condensation of cold air, had both the coldness of ice release and the leverage of magnetic field rotation. Only heard Sarutobi Ryo's whole body bones a burst of crackling sound. And Carrie here is directly hit a straight punch. Both were not dodging, and between the fingers, both sides turned into afterimages. At the same time as a punch hit, explosion-released chakra began to gather. In Sarutobi Ryo's right eye vision, the chakra of the other party's right fist suddenly lit up as if a sun appeared. That was the explosion-release bloodline limit condensed to the extreme. This move, called explosion-release landmine fist, this was Carrie's second bloodline limit. Its role was to detonate explosion-release chakra like a bomb, so as to blow the enemy to pieces. As the leader of Owagekyure's demolition unit, Carrie relied on this move to open mountains and split rocks, and any obstacles would turn to ashes in front of him. At the same time, opening steel release and explosion release. Carrie's offense and defense were strong to an unimaginable degree. Whether it was physical attacks or ninjutsu, they could not harm him. But was in this situation. Sarutobi Ryo suddenly used swift release, and before the fist hit him, he narrowly avoided Carrie's attack. At the same time, the Kusunagi's sword picked up and directly stabbed at Carrie's eyes. Carrie only had time to close his eyelids, and was hit by the Kusunagi's sword. Carrie snorted in pain, although this move was through the eyelids, and the eyelids were also strengthened by steel release, but after all, it still made him feel pain. One hit did not hit. Carrie's straight punch turned into a swing punch. Just like a siege hammer, it swept towards Sarutobi Ryo's side abdomen with bursts of air explosions. This was pure power, and it was also the first time Sarutobi Ryo had met a worthy opponent in violence. In the face of this blow, Sarutobi Ryo once again launched swift release, moving his body. It was not to leave, but to surround Carrie, almost close-quarters combat. The free left palm raised, seemingly to resist the attack of this swing punch. In fact, the palm suddenly released a dazzling light. Storm release. Storm release laser. This technique was the fastest of all of Sarutobi Ryo's attack moves. The speed of light was 300,000 kilometers per second. Even a strong person like Carrie could not avoid it in advance without knowing it. Not being able to dodge in advance meant that he would be hit. Chi. Under the eyelids, the laser burned and a wisp of smoke rose. 94. Section 94 immediately following, the upward-moving laser burned into Gari's eyeball. His left eye was pierced, and his right eye was struck by the laser. Gari let out a furious roar and retreated violently. The laser deviated due to Gari's retreat, leaving a trail of bluish smoke on his body. But that was all. Possessing the steel release, Kekei Genkai, Gari only suffered a bit of bluish smoke on his skin even when attacked by Lightning Release's laser. However, his right eye was not so lucky. At this moment, Gari closed both eyes, panting heavily. He slowly opened his intact left eye, which was covered in blood vessels. As for his right eye, it had already been burned by the lightning release and turned into a charred mass. As expected, Sarutobi Ryo looked at Gari, who was distancing himself. Even the steel release, Kekei Genkai, has its weaknesses. Gari's steel release couldn't cover his eyes, tongue, and other internal body tissues. This was his biggest weakness. Good.
No more novels? Take part in the voting. The most requested novels and those with the most likes will be chosen for publication on EuroAudiobooks.com. There, I can upload as much as I want without the risk of receiving a strike. Our 18 novels and other content that exceed what is morally acceptable are only published on Patreon or the free novels page. Remember, the site is funded by donations on Ko-fi and Patreon memberships.